Justin FREAKIN, the formidable voice of culture.
Hey Justin, are you trolling?
This is the Troll Patrol, live with Justin FREAKIN.
Welcome to the Troll Patrol, live on a freaking Wednesday morning. This should be a lot of fun. We're doing a test stream for what could be becoming a regular segment. Prime Minister's questions, and then we're going to do C-SPAN call-ins. Now, both of those things might sound boring to people who have not experienced either of those things, but both of those things are actually a lot of fucking fun. Now, I don't know what is going on right now. They are live in Parliament, but Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, is not taking questions yet. I didn't know that you guys had like a warm-up act before the Prime Minister comes out. What the fuck is going on over here? Also, the feed from The Guardian is having a hard time. Nope, this is UK Parliament. I'm actually on Parliament's. I'm on Parliament's YouTube. I may have to go to a different YouTube channel though, because it seems like it's having an issue. Directly after Prime Minister's questions, we are going to go to C-SPAN, which has the most hilarious call-in show of all time. So I might be dragging my ass out of bed Wednesday mornings from now on in order to do this stream where we cover Prime Minister's questions. And C-SPAN Washington Journal call-ins. I'm not high enough for this shit. America's the best, says CFC. The best at what? Locking people up? Medical debt? I always get tickled when people say America's the best or the greatest or something. What metric are you measuring by? How better in what way? In what way are we better than every country in the world? The Scottish independence urgent question directly after? I'm sorry, we gotta go to the C-SPAN, which apparently Prime Minister's questions isn't always an hour long. Apparently last week's was about 30 minutes. But Rishi Sunak was not the one fielding questions. It was the Deputy Prime Minister last week. We do indeed get Sunak fielding questions here for our first stream of Prime Minister's questions. I got interested in doing this because we played a clip of his very first session of Prime Minister's questions. Spider Pickle, good morning. So this is a test stream for our possible newest segment here on the Troll Patrol. We're going to cover Prime Minister's questions out of the UK.
And therefore I'd find it rather difficult to give an exact figure of the number of jobs that would be created as a result of any one of them.
We're about 2 minutes away from noon in the UK.
Where free ports have been trialled in Humber and Tees.
Where we will get Rishi Sunak, the current Prime Minister, answering questions. Warlord, I'm so glad to have you here. You might have to translate some of these wankers for us.
Mr. Speaker, as a keen sportsman, I was absolutely delighted to visit the new 3G pitch at Bagland Field, which received
the 3D bitch.
The UK government's multi-sport grassroots facilities programme, which my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, championed when he was Chancellor.
Now, you guys may know me from my covering U.S. politics.
Around sports, as we cheer
I usually know the names of the people we are discussing. I know what is going on, and I try to inform you guys. I know nothing about British politics, so we're going to lean on Warlord awfully hard here. These fucks over here in the UK showing up to work on it's not Thanksgiving yet, Warlord. Thanksgiving is tomorrow.
£20,000 for Pennakai Football Club, which is helping re-establish a girls' team. Would my right honourable friend agree with me that grassroots sport is vital for the health, well-being and quality of life of all our communities?
Thanksgiving is tomorrow.
Mr. Speaker, I would absolutely agree with my right honourable friend.
There is Mr. Sunak taking his seat right on time.
To make the vital improvements to the change room facilities.
You are conflating many things in American history, Warlord.
Are at the heart of every community in Wales, and Wales is at the heart of every community, of every decision taken by this government and this Prime Minister.
The special blankets were
Mr. Speaker. Well, as people
50, 60 years later.
I wish them the best for the next couple of matches. This is an ideal and unparalleled opportunity.
Oh, I guess they're talking about the football, which is going on in Qatar.
In Wales.
One of the stories I almost did last night on the Troll Patrol was the correct pronunciation of Qatar.
For the development development of the sport over the next few years, but could be threatened by the cuts announced by the Chancellor last week. So will the Secretary of State please now speak to the Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport and beg her to safeguard that money for the development of grassroots football in Wales?
Mr. Speaker.
It's pronounced slave land. Warlord is correct.
Many other sports as well through the funds.
Ding, 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 ding.
The United Kingdom. I'm sure other right honourable colleagues will have heard the comments made by the
The right honourable.
of our commitment to grassroots sports across Wales and the United Kingdom. And I
The
look
right
forward to
honourable.
support y Tîm Cymru ar wal goch wythnos nesaf. Diolch.
That completes Welsh questions. Before we come to the Prime Minister's questions, I'd like to point out that the British Sign Language interpretations of proceedings is available to watch on Parliament Live TV.
Wales wants every sheep to play the footy.
Prime Minister
I don't know what that means. Here we go. Let me take a bong rip for Sunak.
Mr. Speaker, I know that members across the House will want to join me in wishing both England and Wales the best of luck for the World Cup. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and
Fuck them both.
in addition to my
I hope they
duties
both
in this
lose.
House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Jonathan Gullis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. People in places like Stoke-on-Trent North, Kidsgrove and Tork aren't getting the help they need quickly enough when it comes to mental health. Fellow campaigner James Starkey and I were delighted when the Prime Minister, who was then Chancellor, said he would back our campaign every step of the way to get mental health nurses into GP surgeries. So will the Prime Minister deliver on his promise, back our No Time to Wait pilot scheme developed by the Royal College of Nursing and help get people the support they need?
Hey.
Well, Mr. Speaker, can I thank my honourable...
Is that Theresa May?
...campaigning on this important issue. I'm pleased to tell him...
Is she still serving in Parliament?
Care networks in England
Didn't they eat her ass?
Up to 2 mental health practitioners to work in surgeries. I know the BMA and NHS are looking at expanding that, and I look forward to working with him to ensure that his constituents in Stoke get the mental health support and care that they need.
We now come to the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Good morning, cunts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and congratulations to
This is
England
the
and
Labour
Wales
leader,
on their start to the World Cup, and good luck for the rest of the tournament.
Richard
Mr. Speaker,
Sterner,
the
or
World
Storn
Cup doesn't belong to
Richardson.
FIFA,
Keith-
and it doesn't
Keith
belong
Sterner.
to the host nation. It belongs to everyone who loves
Where
football.
did I get Richardson from?
It's totally unacceptable that during this tournament, gay football fans are unable to acknowledge who they love. And players have been threatened with suspension if they show solidarity with those fans.
I saw a base picture of one of the announcers in Qatar wearing a
Lowest growth
rainbow-colored
of any
shirt.
OECD nation over the next 2 years. Why?
Mr. Speaker, this country has experienced since 2010 the 3rd highest growth in the G7. This year, the fastest growth in the G7, and unemployment at a multi-decade low.
That's one of those misleading stats where, like, the UK got hit hard during the pandemic.
And if the Labour Party is serious about actually supporting
And their growth was
maybe they can get on the
stalled,
phone with their
bouncing
union
back from the
paymasters and
pandemic.
tell them to call off the strike.
Mr. Speaker, we're
Order.
See, I love this shit. This is so cool.
Just questions, and you're not helping me. Keir Starmer.
I like this dude, too.
total denial. We're bottom of the 38 OECD countries who are all in the same boat when it comes to COVID and Ukraine.
Some might say sloppy party bottom.
It's like a football manager, bottom of the league at Christmas, celebrating an away draw 3 months ago, and it won't wash. So they don't like their record, that's the problem. So let's try it another way. Why is Britain set to be the first country into recession and the last country out?
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased that the Right Honourable Gentleman brought up the OECD report because it contained actually 3 very important points. Firstly, it made the point that actually in the years following the pandemic, we're projected to have almost the highest growth amongst our peer countries. It also made the point it was crystal clear that the challenges we face are completely international in nature. And thirdly, Mr. Speaker, it supported our fiscal plan because it's credible and ensures sustainability.
He is a slick motherfucker. I would trade him for any Republican.
If he actually read the whole report. But he's not interested in substance. He's an opportunist, Mr. Speaker. In 4 weeks, Mr. Speaker, in 4 weeks I've strengthened the economy. We've put more money into the NHS and schools.
In 4 weeks.
A deal. We've delivered a deal to tackle illegal migration. In the same 4 weeks, all we've...
Prime Minister, when I stand, you've got to sit down. But can I just say to you, you came to me quite rightly and said to me, we want to get through Prime Minister's questions. I'm going to give short answers. Please stick to what you have.
Mr. Speaker,
God, I love this.
there's only one party that's crashed the economy and they're sitting there.
Yay!
I noticed this. He won't say
Guilty as charged.
the first into a recession and the last out. So I will. 12 years of Tory failure, followed by 12 weeks of Tory chaos. For a decade, they've let our economy drift aimlessly before suddenly cutting the parachute ropes and slamming it to the ground.
Slamming it.
The changes he's made, a typical household will end up with tax increases of £1,400. They don't want to hear about these tax increases of £1,400. Contrast that to a super wealthy non-dom living here but holding their income overseas.
Nom-dom sounds dirty. What does that mean again? It's a...
I don't need shouting, don't need pointing. You're meant to be a good example when you sit on this front bench. Because you're the second, don't spoil what you're meant to do.
I love
I
him.
don't think they want to hear this. Because of the changes...
Non-domiciled individual, someone who was not born natively. Oh, whose permanent home or domicile is outside the UK.
Living here, but holding their income overseas. How much more has he asked them to pay?
Just order. As I said to the Prime Minister, I said to the Leader of the Opposition, I've got to get through this list. I need you both to help me and think of other members. Come on.
Well, keep giving them hell.
Labour had 13...
Not a dominatrix muncher, no.
Nothing.
You live in sexual anarchy.
Government that took action and tightened the rules. But the problem with his idea is that it would end up costing Britain money. Not my words, the words of the former Labour Shadow Chancellor. But rather than peddling fairy tales and gesture politics, let's actually tell him what we're doing to deliver for this country. A record increase in the national living wage, protecting millions from energy bills, protecting the pensioners' triple lock. That's what we're doing for this country.
Mr. Speaker, if they'd grown the economy at the same rate as the last Labour government, we'd have tens of billions of pounds more to spend on that. And Mr. Speaker, it wasn't a trick question. The answer is he's not asked non-doms to pay a penny more. Every year, he talks about the money. Every year, that's £3.6 billion thrown away because he won't make them pay their taxes here. How many extra doctors could Britain afford with that money?
I was distracted by a kitten. It was just climbing up the wall over here.
Because last week we delivered record increases in funding for the NHS. Not just more doctors, but more nurses, more scans, more operations. That shows our commitment to prioritise the NHS. Not my words, the words of the NHS Chief Executive.
That's like his catchphrase, not my words.
Status would allow us to train 15,000 doctors every year. That's what Labour would do. And we can carry on handing out tax breaks to the super rich. Or we can live in a society where people don't have to go private to get a doctor's appointment. It's that simple. He also hands Shell 90p for every £1 they spend drilling. So they haven't paid a penny in windfall tax. Mr. Speaker, you may have seen this week that somebody shredded £10,000 in protest at those propping up an oil and gas giant. But he shreds £10,000 every other minute propping them up. Which does he think is the more absurd?
Mr. Speaker, this is the government that has actually put in place an economic plan that will deliver confidence and stability to our economy. And all I've heard from the Honourable Gentleman today, there's no answer.
Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene can last. We know this. She's a swinger now.
He talks about the NHS. We're delivering record
You live in
funding
sexual
to the NHS,
anarchy?
but we can only do that on the foundations of a strong economy. You can't deliver for the NHS unless you have a plan for the economy, and he doesn't have either, Mr. Speaker.
He told you his plan.
Every time he opens his mouth, another powerful business voice says he hasn't got a plan on growth. The failure of the last 12 years and the chaos of the last 12 weeks are compounded by the decisions he's taking now. He won't follow Labour's plan to scrap non-dom status. Instead, we've got an NHS staffing crisis. He won't follow Labour's plan to make oil and gas giants pay their fair share. Instead, he hammers working people. And he won't push through planning reform. Instead, he kills off the dream of home ownership. Too weak to take on his party. Too weak to take on vested interest. 12 long years of Tory government, 5 Prime Ministers, 7 Chancellors. Why do they always clobber working people?
Good question.
Mr. Speaker, he talks about leadership. This summer, I stood on my principles and...
That smile, that damn smile.
...to hear, even though it was difficult. When he ran for leader, he told his party what they wanted to hear. And even now, he says one thing and he does the other. He says he cares for working people, but he won't stand up to the unions. He said he'd honour Brexit, but he tried to have a second referendum. And now he tries to talk tough about immigration, but he promised to defend free movement. You can trust him. You can trust him to deliver for his party. You can trust me to deliver for the country.
I would invite Sunak to the muncher. Just saying.
Ruth Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I want the speaker to preside over it and tell us what to do during the muncher.
10 million people in Ukraine are without power due to Russia's barbaric strikes on the country's energy infrastructure. So can my right...
What's the speaker's name, Warlord?
What support we will be providing to our Ukrainian allies to help them repair the damage and keep their citizens warm this winter?
I'm pleased to tell my honourable friend that I spent time discussing this with President Zelensky at the weekend and talking to Ukrainian families about the impact these awful strikes are having on them. I know the whole House will be proud to know...
Sir Lindsay Hoyle will preside over our muncher.
...and water repairs on top of the 570 mobile power generation that we are donating to power facilities across Ukraine. We're also working with the government to repair critical infrastructure with 8 projects identified by UK Export Finance to be delivered in the near future.
We now come to the Leader of the SNP, Ian Blackford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure the whole House will want to join
I don't like this dude.
The moderator of the Church of Scotland to our proceedings this afternoon and to thank him for his sermon at St Margaret's this morning. Mr. Speaker, this morning the Supreme Court clarified a point of law, but the very point of democracy in this union is now at stake, and democracy will not be denied. Because whether Westminster likes it or not...
Have they got to stop the still thing going on over there?
Scotland voted for a Scottish Parliament with a majority...
Yeah, that's a serious topic.
The Prime Minister has every right to oppose independence. He has no right to deny democracy to the people of Scotland.
Hear, hear.
The Minister keeps blocking that referendum. Will he at least be honest and confirm that the very idea that the United Kingdom is a voluntary union of nations is now dead and buried.
Let him have it.
Mr. Speaker, let me start by saying we respect the clear and definitive ruling of the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom. And what I would say to the honourable gentleman, that firstly, I am looking forward to also seeing the moderator of Scotland tomorrow. And I think that the people of Scotland want us to be working on fixing the major challenges that we collectively face, whether that's the economy, supporting the NHS, or indeed supporting Ukraine. Now is the time for politicians to work together, and that's what this government will do.
I'd invite Suella Braverman to the Muncher.
Speaker, it is right that we respect the decision of the court.
I heard she's a snake. I wouldn't trust her, though.
Prime Minister can't claim to respect the rule of law and then deny democracy in the very same breath. If democracy is to matter, if elections matter, then mandates matter. Since 2014, the Scottish National Party has won 8 elections in a row. Last year, we won a landslide. The Scottish Parliament now has the biggest majority for an independence referendum in the history of devolution. The Prime Minister doesn't even have a personal mandate to sit in 10 Downing Street. What right does a mandate have to deny Scottish democracy?
Okay, I take that back. I like Humpty Dumpty.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to Scottish democracy, I'm pleased that the Scottish Government has one of the most powerful devolved assemblies anywhere in the world. And I'm pleased, and I was pleased very shortly after becoming Prime Minister to be the first Prime Minister in over a decade to attend the Council, to sit down with the First Minister, to explore ways in which we can work together.
You come to the Muncher and I will assure you, you will be pleased.
Whether that's delivering our growth deals, delivering free ports, or ensuring that the £1.5 billion of extra money can go towards supporting public services, that's what we're committed to doing in Scotland.
Gareth Johnson.
Mr. Speaker, last month, Just Stop Oil clambered up the Dartford crossing, causing chaos for days. They then attacked artworks, the M25, and anything else to cause misery and mayhem. These people are not protesters, they are criminals.
Oh, go fuck yourself.
Prime Minister, therefore, consider making Just Stop Oil.
And what's this dude? No, you're not fooling anybody with your fucking hairpiece back there. What's going on there?
Organisation they actually are.
Mr. Speaker, the kind of demonstrations we've seen recently disrupt people's daily lives. They cause mass misery for the public and they put people in danger. The police have our
mass misery
in their efforts to minimise this disruption and tackle reckless and illegal activity. The public order gives them the powers they need, and I look forward to seeing the support that bill receives from every part of this.
I'll feel bad if he's got like the alopecia or some shit.
One of my constituents, Vanessa, has contacted me in floods of tears. Her mortgage payments have risen by £500 a month.
Don't you cry tonight.
She and her husband were already struggling with high energy bills and high food bills. Now, like 1 in 4 across the country, they fear losing their home. We are out of options and heartbroken, says Vanessa.
This guy's the leader of the Lib Dems?
Introduce a new mortgage protection fund, paid for by reversing his tax cuts to the banks. Will he help Vanessa keep her home?
Where is the weed?
Mr. Speaker, I'm deeply sorry to hear about Vanessa's circumstances.
And the Lib Dems would be like your centrist party, correct?
The Chancellor announced last week will help families like hers up and down the country because it's the right plan to tackle inflation, to limit the increase in mortgage rates and ensure confidence in our economy.
Good morning, Sky Comet.
Offering low-interest loans to those those owners on benefits to cover interest on mortgages of up to $250,000. The Chancellor is also meeting with mortgage lenders in the coming weeks, and we will continue to do all we can to support those homeowners who are struggling with their payments.
Greg Tracy.
Mr. Speaker. I recently took part in the Pitching In campaign, which promotes grassroots sports and also celebrates the volunteers who make it possible every week. So would the Prime Minister join me in thanking those volunteers for the incredible work they do? And also, with top-flight football taking a bit of a break at the moment because of the World Cup, would he join me in reminding people that it's the perfect opportunity?
I don't know, their Tories are fucking closer to the Democrats.
Who are incredibly welcoming and including in that, of course, Atherstone Town Community Football Club, Bedworth United and Coleshill Town in my constituency.
Look, I'm not that familiar with him, but I'd trade Rishi Sunak for any fucking Republican we have.
He makes an excellent point, actually, that volunteers have a vital role.
I have not slept. I was going to stay up all day.
And actually the delivery of major events, and I join him in thanking them for everything that they do. Sport accounts for over half, Mr. Speaker, of volunteering in the UK, and every one volunteer generates a capacity for at least 8 more people to participate in sport. And I know.
Well, I had not been up long when I was streaming earlier. That was my morning. This is my evening now.
Mr. Speaker, good afternoon. Mr. Speaker, since 2014, the SNP have won 8 elections, and we now have more councillors, members of the Scottish Parliament.
I bet you are goofy tired.
Than any other Scottish political party. Every one of those elected members were elected on.
All right, just looking at him, I wanted to say I didn't like him, but I like his accent.
Mr. Speaker, what right does this government have to deny Scottish democracy, refuse an independence referendum, and to keep us shackled?
I like this gal's glasses.
In this involuntary and unequal union against the people.
Well, Mr. Speaker, again, we respect the decision of the court today with regard to the referendum, and we're getting on with the business of working constructively, collaboratively, in partnership with the Scottish Government to deliver for his constituents. Indeed, the Ayrshire Growth Deal is investing over £100 million to make use of his region's strong industrial heritage, potentially making more use of renewable energy. That's the kind of positive project we should be focused on, and that's what we'll keep on delivering.
John Penrose.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has rightly promised to recruit a successor to Lord Geit as his ethics advisor promptly. But would he accept that threats to integrity are often broader than the job description of the Prime Minister's advisor on the Ministry?
You think this is boring? I love them like it's like a rap battle. I'm so into this, and they'll boo and yell at each other. I fucking dig it.
Developed with organisations like Transparency International and Spotlight on Corruption to show he will walk the talk and put party integrity and government integrity.
They're actually talking about substance, though.
Of our democracy.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his comprehensive and thoughtful suggestions. As he acknowledged, he knows that I've committed to appointing an independent advisor on ministerial interests, and I very much look forward to studying his other proposals in proper time.
Chris Law.
Mr. Speaker, just 3 months ago, this appointed interim Prime Minister said...
Oh, I love this dude. I've heard him speak before.
We live in a union, which is, of course, there by consent and by democracy. And added, I accept that. Well, Mr. Speaker, by the...
Sardini! Good morning. So glad to have you here. Thank you for being a freaking follower.
By a clear majority in the Scottish Parliament to have their say through a referendum on the independent future for Scotland. So it begs the ultimate question, Mr. Speaker. Can this Prime Minister tell us if he accepts Scottish democracy? And if so, how that's compatible with today's Supreme Court ruling that clearly exposes the myth that the UK is a voluntary union and is upheld by consent?
Here.
Mr. Speaker, at a time like this, the Scottish people want to see their governments working together on the things that matter to them, and I believe that that is possible. And actually, he should know this, Mr. Speaker. In his own constituency, we've been able to support culture and tourism, working together to bring the V&A to Dundee. That's an example of a positive project. It demonstrates the benefits of the union, and that's.
He asked you a fucking question, dude.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My right honourable friend will be aware that the government provides a slim financial support across 5 firms for small modular reactors. A few other countries have woken up and are seriously investing in SMRs. As Sizewell will not be running until 2031 at the earliest, should we not be doing the same?
No, my honourable friend actually makes an excellent point, and hopefully he was heartened to hear what Johnson said last week.
Now that you bring it up, Sardini, it is just another day
And I think he's right to acknowledge...
Mass shooting USA, at least 6 people dead at a Walmart in Virginia on the East Coast.
...program alongside projects like Hinckley and Sizewell. That's why we've allocated £385 million to support them.
Curious are coming in with Kid Rock lyrics.
As soon as possible.
Dr. Philippa Whitford.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. During the 2014 referendum, we were told that Scotland was an equal partner in a family of nations. Yet the disaster that is Brexit was forced on Scotland against our will, and we see devolution wound back by legislation such as the Internal Market Act. So if the Prime Minister still claims the UK is...
So Scotland didn't want to be part of Brexit. Northern Ireland didn't want to be part of Brexit either, right?
People of Scotland get to make a choice over their own future.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the UK is a collaborative and constructive union that is delivering for the people of Scotland.
Wait, is Wales part of Scotland? I thought it was its own thing.
Well, we're working collaboratively with the Scottish Government to invest in aerospace, advanced manufacturing and space. Those are the types of activities that will bring tangible benefit to the people in her region, and that's the right focus for the Government.
Angela Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a North Yorkshire MP, my right honourable friend will know how crucial bus services are to our communities. Last month, Arriva stopped the only bus between Selby and Doncaster, meaning that 40 Selby College students had to find alternative transport to get to college. Thankfully, the college itself stepped in to resolve the situation. Additionally, across North Yorkshire, around 80 other bus services...
If you don't sin, Jesus died for nothing.
Can he advise what action he will take to ensure that essential services are not withdrawn at short notice?
Also, taking the Lord's name in vain has been misinterpreted. That is actually using the Lord to profit.
My right honourable friend is absolutely right, and he knows that I share exactly the same challenges that he faced in our rural areas of making sure that our constituents have access to the bus services they need. I'm pleased that the Chancellor's allocated funding for extra bus services across the country, and I look forward to working with...
Oh yeah, public transit. We're all about public transit.
Rural areas like North Yorkshire to provide the connectivity that's so important for people to have opportunity and get access to public services.
Olivia Blake.
May I refer the House to my register of interests? Mr. Speaker, tomorrow marks 1 year since 32 people lost their lives in the Channel. New evidence suggests that the boat reached British waters and that the French and British authorities knew that it was in distress for a very long time. Families are still waiting for answers from the Marine...
They didn't go rescue them?
Why has this investigation taken so long? Will he commit to a full public inquiry afterwards?
ACAB means they're cops too. Look at this shit.
There were safe and legal routes into the UK.
Well, Mr. Speaker, every life that is lost in the Channel...
Cops suck ass everywhere. We just give ours guns.
We break the cycle of criminal
tanks
that are exploiting people and trafficking them, and that's what the Home Secretary is focused on. We have accepted over 380,000 people over the past few years because this is a place where people can seek refuge and sanctuary, but we must be able to do that in a sustainable way, and that's why it's right that we tackle...
Oh, the boat wreck was immigrants. Is that it?
Mr. Speaker, rising energy bills are a challenge for all of us, and constituents in Sleaford and North Hykeham are very grateful for much of the support that has been given by government.
Okay, I see now.
Falling below freezing in Lincolnshire. Those living in
Piece of
park
shit.
are particularly concerned.
Not her. Sunak on that one.
For us, from my honourable friend,
He's still pretty though.
When and how people living in park homes will receive the £400 which they're entitled to.
And my honourable friend has consistently and rightly championed her rural constituents, making sure that they get access to the energy support that we're providing. It's something that the Chancellor prioritised in last week's autumn statement. I will ensure that we get the money out as quickly as possible. She should also be reassured that the cold weather payment system provides extra financial support to those vulnerable constituents when temperatures drop below a certain point.
You know, for as rich as he is, like, his suits are kind of plain. He needs a little flair to his attire. Biden dresses better.
Did Scotland vote for the Tories? No. What we did vote for, don't shout me down. Don't shout me down. I've listened to all of you. What we did vote for only last year was the right to choose our own future. With that in mind, and given a previous non-answer from the Prime Minister, can the Prime Minister tell this House, tell us all in fact, how a nation can leave this so-called voluntary union?
Answer the goddamn question.
Mr. Speaker, the challenges that we face right now are those that require cooperation between our governments.
Answer the question.
The NHS, and I'm pleased that last week's autumn statement means that the Scottish Government will receive £1.5 billion.
They don't want to play with you no more. They want to go be part of the EU. You let them.
Theresa May.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Scotland is a proud nation with a unique heritage. It is a valued member of our family of nations, a union of people bound through the generations by shared interests.
I like this guy. Look at those sideburns.
But this morning's Supreme Court decision gives the Scottish nationalists, the SNP, the opportunity for once to put the people of Scotland first. And end its obsession with breaking us apart.
Damn, the people of Scotland are telling you what they want.
I think.
What is it with British people telling other countries how to behave?
Put it very well, Mr. Speaker.
Angus Brendan McNeill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister won't answer, but it's obvious that the route to Scottish independence is now elections, and we know Prime Ministers going to be many of them. Now, Mr. Speaker, inequality costs, and in France, the middle earners earn 20% more than in the UK, and low earners...
Is Scotland its own country?
This inequality is why the cost of energy and the cost of living hits people worse in the UK, and it's why I'm for independence, incidentally, to choose a better path. But meantime, in my constituency...
You people confuse me so much.
...fuel customers and a higher rate of fuel poverty than in Northern Ireland.
They don't want to be part of your country, though.
And extend the £200 payment that's going to Northern Ireland to the off-grid customers in my geographically distinct constituency, the Hebrides, on the basis of fairness. Yes or no?
Mr. Speaker, last week's autumn statement announced £55 billion to support families and businesses across the United Kingdom with their energy bills. And the Chancellor paid particular attention to those that are off-grid in rural areas by doubling the support to £200 for them, and that will help many people in his constituency.
Yeah, England's a country, Scotland's a country, Ireland's a country, right? Like, those are things. And then together they're the United Kingdom, right? That's how that works.
For hosting the event in Parliament. So will the Prime Minister, though he represents a Yorkshire constituency, join me in welcoming our Lancastrian and businesses to Parliament today, and join us in supporting our proud history and bright future by levelling up what we consider to be the best county?
May I offer my best wishes to my honourable friend, and indeed to you, Mr. Speaker, for Lancashire Day. And I can put local rivalry aside on this occasion to join her in thanking
Lancashire Day
to our country and to wish her the very best for today's event.
Kirsten Oswald.
Mr. Speaker, what we've heard from the Prime Minister today is, in essence, that no matter how Scotland votes, Westminster will decide. But democracy demands differently to that. Mr. Speaker, the late Canon Kenyon Wright said, what if that other voice we know so well says, we say no and we are the state? Well, we say yes, and we are the people. And it is the people in Scotland who have to be heard. This place can't stand in the way of democracy. And if this Prime Minister with no mandate thinks it can, is he seriously telling us that this is a voluntary union of equals?
Well,
it sure seems like they don't want to be part of your bullshit.
But on the people of Scotland, that's who we're delivering for. I'm happy to meet with the First Minister.
Northern Ireland as well doesn't want to be part of your bullshit too, correct?
Whether it's moving civil service jobs to Scotland, whether it's delivering free ports or indeed the extra funding for public services, this is a government that will deliver for the people of Scotland, and we will do it constructively and collaboratively.
Order, order. I would now like to make a statement. On the 20th of October, the Culture, Media, Sport Committee published a special report on answers given to it by the Right Honourable Member for Mid-Bedfordshire when she was the Secretary of State for DCMS. The Honourable Member for Occles, South and Perthshire subsequently wrote to me asking for precedent.
What the fuck did he just say? Occles, South and Russia? What?
I declined to do so since the bar for such a complaint is high. The House should only take...
Nick Fletcher to move.
What the fuck just happened?
Well, it's an...
Was that all? Was that... It's over? Ooh. It kind of come to an abrupt end. I thought it was an hour long, motherfuckers. I was on UK Parliament's YouTube channel. What is Parliament TV? Oh, it's 30 minutes, you say. What the LBC be doing
Speaker,
afterwards?
as you've
the floor.
See, shit's still going on.
As you've just explained, the Commons Culture Committee in which I sit published a unanimous
I guess Sunak is out of there. And they're just gonna rabble between themselves.
And the testimony she gave to the committee, and there are now considerable public interest in what should happen next. I want to put on record, Mr. Speaker, that I deplore social media pylons against you or anyone else. I've been on the receiving end of them, and they are exceedingly unpleasant. But could I ask for guidance on what I and other members should tell their constituents about integrity in politics in this context? If someone misleads a committee, what should happen next?
Can I just say, integrity is that, first of all, Clinton letter, but only half the letter is not integrity. In fact, far from it. It misled the people of this country.
Wait. You're all every person is required to speak to the old fuck.
Expect that to happen and an impartial speaker. So if that was an apology, I don't think it was very good.
Mr. Speaker, in following on from that, honourable members of this House have certain strict duties on them. First, there is a duty of upholding.
I speak to the Speaker. Do I get to speak to the Speaker?
In breaching the confidentiality of the Speaker's private correspondence, the member for Oakle and South Perthshire has...
No, I want to speak to the... No, people, don't leave.
Frankly, for that, if that was an apology, that was not sufficient for that alone. Yeah. But
Washington Journal are already going on, and it is going to be a blast as well. I'm going to get it fired up. I'll keep Parliament going on over here.
Of science, I think, is just so disheartening. And I listened to the callers, and we had someone who was the head of the free world who talked about putting bleach in your arms. I mean, this is the kind of nonsense that some people just supported. And so I hate to get so partisan, but the politicization of it was so harmful. Not just now, the caller alluded to it. It wasn't just a negative impact that it had during the current time, but the implications moving forward. You cannot politicize medicine. And then to listen to Fauci, his heart was in it. He talked about how he would take care of those who were indigent, those who were rich. It didn't matter. And that's the reality.
Wait, he did? I think that was Jesus.
An educator, and watch how things were happening at schools and how board members were in trouble because they were just trying to make sure that students wore masks. The goal was to save lives. And certainly there were mistakes made, but this was not a blueprint. We hadn't had one of these kind of situations. I know we talked about 110, 120 years ago, but the world was different now. The world is different now. People didn't travel to the degree that they did, so we were doing this in the moment. So, yeah, there were mistakes made. It wasn't perfect, but how it got so politicized at the expense of people's lives, it's complicated. We have to come together as a nation, and there are ways to do it. But thank you so much for having this conversation, and appreciate you.
All right. Thank you, Jerry. We talked a bit about Dr.
Thank you, Jerry.
Saying he'd be
more than willing to testify before House committees as the Republican House takes over January the 3rd. An event yesterday on the U.S.-Mexico border with the headline here from the New York Times, at border, McCarthy renews threat to impeach Mayorkas. The Homeland Security Secretary, Alejandro Mayorkas. Here are some of the comments from Kevin McCarthy.
We have lost operational control of our southern border, empowering drug cartels and human traffickers. They have fired shots at our National Guard. They put AK-47s pointing at a helicopter.
Speaking of AK, maybe an AR,
rape the women.
Just another day in mass shooting USA.
Thinks the border is secure.
At least 6 people dead at a Walmart in Virginia.
And Border Patrol from enforcing our laws while vilifying them at the same time. Do you realize what that has done? In the last 10 days...
Yes, ACAB means Border Patrol, too.
...have committed suicide. A total of 14 this year. A number we have not seen in decades. He ended the Remain in Mexico policy and wants to end Title 42. His actions have produced...
Sir, no, like he kept extending Title 42, and we are upset about that.
May never recover from Secretary Mayorkas' dereliction of duty. This is why today I am calling on the Secretary to resign. He cannot and must not remain in that position. If Secretary Mayorkas...
So get ready, this is the next 2 years in politics, other than covering the presidential election.
Every action...
This is what the Republicans are going to have to offer.
We're
going to impeach this person, we're going to impeach that person, investigation into Hunter Biden.
Secretary Mayorkas...
Next 2 years, that's what's going to happen.
He would have been fired by now for the failures of what he has
It's going to be the same old story, same old song and dance.
And expect more within their government. Enough is enough.
Nearly
it's time for a change.
The COVID pandemic, the COVID response. We're asking you about the lessons learned from the U.S. response to the pandemic. This is from Monmouth University. We touched on this poll earlier, and they've been doing regular polling about how people are feeling about the pandemic, et cetera. The concerns here, this one is part of their polling, asks about concerns about serious COVID illness in families. And they've done this over a number of months, but looking back just at around Thanksgiving time, November of 2020, 50% were very concerned about COVID illness in the family. November of last year, 34% were very concerned. And the most recent polling is their September polling on concern about families having COVID is 22%.
Yeah, I don't know what the
media, Scotty says this, don't trust
debt ceiling fight is going to look like.
Or big media in a crisis. I remember New York City and the refrigerator trucks, the full hospitals, exhausted healthcare workers, how it all dropped like a rock after the vaccine, and then the anti-vaxxers who wish they'd have taken the vaccine before dying. Thanks, Dr. Fauci, for your hard work. And one more here. The pandemic has changed the way we think of each other. It has magnified political differences, says James in Troy, Michigan. David's in Arizona on the Republican line. Good morning.
Ooh, this is going to be fun.
Yes. The American people have learned a lot from this COVID experience. That the government has found a way that they can control us, literally, by suggestion of us dying from a COVID. There's been a world premiere that just came out this week, and it's called Died Suddenly. And anybody who's had a vaccine or anybody who wants to get a booster or a vaccine should look at this and see what's going on.
Who made this movie? Dinesh D'Souza?
The forensics and all the doctors are just freaking out over this. And that's all I have to say about that.
All right, Delray Beach, Florida. Mike, Democrats line. Good morning.
Mike?
Mike in Delray Beach, Florida. Go ahead.
Hey, Bill.
Yeah, hey, you're on the air.
Hey, great to have you. Hey, I've been watching you for years. Enjoyed when you first came on the scene. Nice to see you back in the seat. Go back quite a long time. I tell you.
Thank you, sir.
I haven't listened to C-SPAN through my phone, but hearing McCarthy's voice through my phone makes me want to throw it away. I can't believe you guys let these recordings of these people speak of these, just I mean, is it rhetoric? I mean, the callers are one thing.
Well, technically, I do a lot of rhetoric.
Like right now, listening to this.
How many viewers and listeners?
Yeah. Do you have a number?
We don't use the TV ratings.
Not really ratings in C-SPAN.
We don't.
Any guess? Like 10 people or 100 or
I think more than
10,000?
More than 10. I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I don't know.
The call lines stay busy.
Is it just you, me, Greta, and a couple other people, and we're just calling and a bunch of idiots? A lot of them sound like the same people saying the same thing.
I'll stipulate there are probably thousands of people listening / watching, but let's get back to the point. Let's talk about
there's at least 7, 8 right now.
On January 13th of the pandemic, taking her to fly international to Colombia, South America, studies abroad. She speaks Spanish. She learned Spanish. South Florida, those people speak Spanish. I wanted my daughter to be able to speak to those people. Speaking about the pay for medical care, those people seem to suffer more than I did in this world. It seems a shame that medical care doesn't, are they worse than me? Is that why they suffered more? Or is it because they don't have access to medical care? I'm not sure. I've been fortunate. I'm driving her to the airport. I'd heard on the radio little wisps. This is the beginning, 2000, whenever it was. And I remember hearing, little thing, China, something's going on, a little pandemic. I'm thinking, well, and then, of course, we're Trump, nothing to worry about over here. And I'm thinking, Colombia, kind of a modern country, but, government overthrows, all this. I got plenty of things to worry about. I'm taking her. It's a 4-month deal, and she's traveling alone, they're meeting her there. But so I got nothing to worry about. She gets there.
No idea, Scott Comment.
COVID shows up in Florida. West coast of Florida.
It peeked out from around the corner. COVID just showed up.
Okay, DeSantis, you liar. Yeah, free down there. They locked up. I couldn't go to the beach. My daughter had a flight back because of the pandemic. She got to go through Carnival there. Enjoyed Carnival. Free Carnival down there. Just the biggest carnival, second biggest from Rio. My daughter got to enjoy that. The 15th of March, they shut down. School shut down, online school in Colombia, lockdown. People obeyed their government. Pandemic went out of control in Palm Beach County. My daughter could have come back. We live a half mile from the beach. Couldn't go to the beach. DeSantis had her shut down. I couldn't, and I could go to the liquor store 4 blocks away, walk right in there, grab a pint. And then
did your daughter wind up getting?
My daughter could have come home and walked to my beach and done yoga every morning. Instead, she stayed in Colombia for 5 months because it was safer there.
Did she ever get COVID there?
Hell no. They were locked up. They snuck out. She met some of her boyfriends and stuff down there. But they didn't. The people are smart.
All right, thanks for weighing in, Mike. We're going to go to Ocean City, New Jersey next up. Ed on the.
Whoa.
Yes, Ed O'Donnell. My father was a great doctor. Went to Yale and Yale Med. 2 lessons. One, people
good on you, Ed.
Afford a doctor. But the government and charities and philanthropists have to help hospital emergency rooms so that all low-income people can be seen quickly. The second thing is that low-income people need to get vaccinated, boosted, and the flu shot, and wear masks. I run a charity in Philly. We help low-income people. A lot of them are depressed, and they don't have the motivation to take care of their health issues.
Yeah. I'm sure that is an issue.
The latest numbers, the updated numbers on COVID cases, so
Fair
far,
point.
pandemic and COVID deaths. 98 million, over 98 million COVID cases in the U.S.
I love this shit.
Over 1,73,115 is reported by the CDC. Bridgehampton, New York, up next, Republican line. This is Ted.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, all you have to do is just look at the stats. All this rhetoric and this nonsense I'm hearing from these people. We are the most locked down country in the entire world, yet double the deaths of every other country. No one even comes close to the deficit we have. It is absolutely...
That's also not true.
Say that, oh, we did a great job. We did a terrible job.
We did do a terrible job, but both of those facts that you just stated are false.
Of almost 5 million people in this country, we don't even know who they are, and we have people defending Mayorkas. This country is terribly in trouble, and it is an embarrassment, especially listening to these people defending Fauci. This guy was a complete fraud. Follow the money, just like Watergate. Just follow the money. Thank you.
Tampa, Florida. We'll hear from Mark.
He was concise. He wrapped it up.
What are some of the lessons you've learned from our response, Mark?
Well, I live in Florida, and, I've heard, a lot of people claim that DeSantis had some great panacea of a plan that was, was great for COVID, but that really wasn't, that's not what I saw. And, there was a point where we had the second highest COVID deaths per capita in the entire country, and I think at one point Florida and Texas made up 1/3 of the entire country's COVID deaths. And while DeSantis continued, even during that time period, continued to play down COVID, we had hospitals that had unprecedented waiting times for beds. People couldn't even get in to get a bed, and yet he was still trying to downplay it. And then there was Florida had a horrible record of reporting. They had inaccurate, incomplete reports. And
he is correct. Yes.
You never knew exactly how many deaths were occurring or how many infections were occurring. I think they did that on purpose to try to hide some of the numbers. And one other thing I wanted to say is the majority Republican counties experienced 73 more deaths, COVID deaths per 100.
Spider Pickle, this is Washington Journal on C-SPAN. They take call-ins, and they have the best call-in show.
Maybe a little more careful with the way they handled COVID.
We will hear some of the craziest of the crazy.
Hey, Mark, so we touched on an article earlier that talked about the numbers of people between 2019 and 2022 that came from states like New York, south to Florida, driven by, the article says, the stricter COVID measures in New York and other Northeast states. Do you think that's more the case, or the case that they're driven more by the tax benefits of moving to a state like Florida?
I think it's probably more the tax benefits, because, even when DeSantis was saying he was going to lift mandates, which we really didn't have any.
Oh, I love some C-SPAN.
To speak of.
I am a C-SPAN junkie.
Had to go to. They required masking there in their private business, so you still had to.
I am logged in on my C-SPAN account,
regardless of what DeSantis was doing. So, luckily, I think that helped save lives as well.
Okay, to Doug in Oxford, New Jersey, Republican line. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Doug in Oxford. Doug, Oxford, New Jersey. Go ahead.
On the Republican line, this should be good.
The Democrats use COVID as a weapon to gain more power. They changed election laws, which favored them. They deny all this, but it's what they did. They acted like authoritarians, telling people if you don't get vaccinated, you're fired. Our current president, said this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Well, that's a lie. He also said that if you get COVID shot, you can't spread it. That's a lie. In fact, I think it suggests it's opposite. You're probably more likely to get COVID, according to the studies in Israel and England. And one of your other callers.
No, that's not true.
We're whatever the richest country in the world, but we had the highest cases of COVID and COVID deaths. And we did a terrible job, and I think it was because of hospital protocols. Absolutely sick how the way they acted like authoritarians, and they tried to back themselves off of it right before the midterm elections. Sadly, nobody saw this. Disgusting. Thank you.
Here's an opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal by Justin Hart, the founder of Rational. COVID lockdown.
You gotta love how he just moves on from that.
Is the headline of the Wall Street
Journal. All right, guys, I'm going to take a commercial break, hit the Twitch commercials.
Mr. Trump did very
We play them all at once. We come back, and you miss no content. When we get back, more calls on Washington Journal from C-SPAN.
Your gym, your coffee.
Here on the Troll Patrol, live.
For cancer.
Hi, I'm Justin FREAKIN. I'm a leftist broadcaster and comedian. Not liberal. Leftist. And despite what you may have heard from right-wing propaganda, George Soros isn't handing out Soros bucks and funding people like me. There are no Koch brothers, Mercers, or any number of right-wing think tanks funding content on the left side of the spectrum the way they fund people like Ben Shapiro, Dave Rubin, and Dennis Prager. And YouTube doesn't monetize videos that are controversial or deal with politics unless you're someone like Steven Crowder. So this is an ultimatum. Become a patron. Support my Patreon, or I'm going to become a right-winger and get some of that easy money. You know for a fact that I could be bigger than Charlie Kirk or Jesse Lee Peterson.
Amazing!
All I have to do is talk about how I used to be an SJW snowflake, but the left went too far with their cultural Marxism, and Republicans are stupid enough to buy it, even though this video exists. And you know I'm right, so give me your money or I'm selling you out.
We live in turbulent times. The media is full of deception, conspiracy theories, and fake news. Now, more than ever, it is important to ensure you're getting information from a source that's freaking reliable.
I'm Justin Mullins, and this is the Freakin' News.
Get a breaking or interesting story with a humorous twist in about a minute weekdays, 8 a.m. Eastern on YouTube, BitChute, Odyssey, and more.
Sad they only get to yell at the Prime Minister for a half hour. Back to calls on C-SPAN.
Just about a month ago, and I'm hoping you can find this article. I think Yale did a study that says now that in those counties with higher death rates, they managed to link up deaths with what party the people were affiliated with. And in that study, it was 3-1 Republican to Democrat. So I think I don't remember the exact figures. Forgive me if I'm a little off with that. I think I'm pretty accurate. But the takeaway for me, and I think the takeaway for historians, will be that COVID denialism saved democracy in America from election denialism.
In Albany, New York, Republican line. Welcome.
Republicans killed so many of their voters, it cost them in the midterms, is what he's saying.
My thought on the COVID-19 was that people didn't think things through when they did these experiments, and there was a lot of finger pointing afterward. The United States said it was China's fault. China said it was the United States' fault because they gave out the grants. And at first, the United States had denied that it was their fault. Meanwhile, experimentation is going on all over the planet with various diseases, and we don't know the outcome of that. I think before these scientific experiments happen, people should give a little more thought to what could be the consequence, and they should acknowledge if they're at fault. When I was a child, there were experiments in the Southwest on atomic testing. It got in the grass.
I mean, she's right about that.
Cattle got in the milk, and then children who took the milk program were drinking milk that was radioactive.
Yes, that happened.
Now we have experimentation with the building blocks of the universe going on our planet. We don't know the consequences.
Linda, do you think during the pandemic that when public health officials made mistakes, they were slow, or they didn't respond at all, didn't come back and say, oh, we made a mistake here, and here's the reason why? Not enough of that happened in your view?
She thinks we should be playing God.
Is that all over this planet, there's experiments going on where people have not thought it through. They have not thought what could actually be the outcome. And when there is a bad outcome, they tend to deny that they had any involvement, and that we have to get the scientific community to understand that before they do any experiments that are risky or new and we have no idea of the outcome, we should think of the conceivable consequences. So,
all right, appreciate that.
The Goldblum principle, right? Jeff Goldblum from Jurassic Park. You were too concerned if you could to ask if you should.
On this Getaway Wednesdays, we kick off the busy holiday travel season. We'll explore key areas of America's transportation sector. First up, we'll be joined by Transport Topics senior congressional correspondent Eugene Molero, who'll be with us to talk about the potential
What up, Eugene?
of a freight rail strike.
You got some pretty eyes. Stop looking at me with those eyes.
Congress. Later on, we'll dig into the growing electric vehicle industry with Joe Britton of the Zero Emission Transportation.
What up, Joe? I need to go work for C-SPAN. I could be a PA for C-SPAN. What she's doing right now, that's what I have done for TV
this Thanksgiving
stations.
weekend on C-SPAN, specially selected
She's
public
floor
affairs
managing.
programming in prime time. Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, a conversation with Supreme Court Justice Elena Kagan as she talks about her life and career and diversity on the court. Then at 9 p.m. Eastern, Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito.
Fuck Alito.
Feelings of shock and betrayal after the leak of the draft of
His feelings of shock and betrayal.
On Friday.
I'm not high enough for this shit.
Challenges collecting sales taxes for out-of-state purchases before the Senate.
I like the way she said that. Sales taxes.
At 8 p.m. Eastern, Native American survivors of abuse at federal Indian boarding schools testifying at a House hearing. The abuse happened at most of the 408 boarding schools run by the United States.
Yes, we need to have a reckoning with that.
1969. Watch this Thanksgiving weekend.
You said 1969.
C-SPAN
Nice.
or online.
But we definitely need to have a reckoning the way Canada has had a reckoning.
American History TV, Saturdays on C-SPAN 2, exploring the people and events.
American History TV. That's the TV spinoff of American History X.
The Cuban Missile Crisis. Political and intelligence experts revisit the October 1962 confrontation between the U.S. and Soviet nuclear powers, focused on crisis leadership and the impact of military and political intelligence. And at 6 p.m. Eastern, a conversation regarding challenges educators face when teaching colonialism and the
See, that's a great conversation.
Host of the Washington Times History as It Happens podcast, and historian David Silverman, exploring the American story.
I would love to go to work for C-SPAN. The only problem is I really like this, smoking pot and making lewd jokes while watching this content.
Pre-order your copy of the Congressional Directory.
Well, Stream Elements bought. I'm glad you let us know that you're running.
Federal government with bio and contact information for every House.
Fucking Marsha Blackburn.
Important information for congressional.
I'm not high enough to see Marsha Blackburn's
federal agencies and
mug this morning.
Scan the code at the right to pre-order your copy today. It's $29.95 plus shipping and handling, and every purchase helps support our nonprofit operations at cspanshop.org.
Damn, C-SPAN, non-profit at 30 fucking bucks.
Journal
plus
continues.
shipping and handling.
And with us is Eugene Molero. He is with Transport Topics. He covers Congress, our senior congressional reporter, on with us this morning. As we enter the busiest holiday travel day of the year, Eugene covers it all. We'll focus here on auto travel and also touch on the potential of a rail strike.
Yeah.
First of all, on the numbers, apparently 55 million Americans could be on the road as of today. I kind of like this headline.
On the road again.
At Market Watch, rather. It's almost like the roaring 20s after the 1918 flu. This Thanksgiving, people are traveling as if it's 2019.
Yeah.
No, that's a great point. And
CS 292 indeed is just another day in mass shooting USA.
In 2000. And
economists and
at least 6 people are dead at a shooting in Chesapeake, Virginia, on the East Coast.
If in fact,
a coastal town. The shooter is dead. I don't know if that 6 counts the shooter.
That inflation perhaps didn't have a big,
happened at a Walmart
impact on the actual family. The middle class.
Another reason not to shop at Walmart.
Disposable income that they can travel. So that headline is pretty much on the nose. But looking forward, it remains to be seen. So a lot of the analysts.
We're talking transportation.
Studying to see the traffic patterns, to see whether or not the trips were
going into Thanksgiving. They will take calls here in a second.
Like interstate trips.
It's the most amount of people theoretically on the road since 2019 or before. Are America's...
I'm sorry, RB, but then again, at this point, you're getting a lot of news from me, aren't you?
That actually is the big debate going on.
I want to be a trusted name in news. However, also don't trust me because I'm just a stupid YouTuber.
Yes, but there needs a greater need for capacity, and that is what the implementation of the infrastructure law is all about. To direct funds.
I'm sorry, Eugene. I'm talking all over top of you.
So the state DOTs can have additional dollars. So
I knew. Capacity. Not long after I got off the stream.
At the metropolitan regions where there's a lot of
maybe
traffic.
Even just as soon as I got off the stream, because usually I put something on YouTube,
here in Northern
and then I go to work on. I've got shit that I do.
Has been expanded, and that was supplemented with money from the infrastructure law.
This morning it was doing 3. Count 3 editions of the freaking news.
But there's aging infrastructure.
We'll have one every day, despite the fact that the Troll Patrol will not be on.
Safety, and all of that is, is to accommodate, the rate of drivers that we're going to see.
That rollout, that bill was signed into law by the president a year ago, November of 2021. You pointed out locally here the Route 66 expansion. How quickly are...
Unfortunately, I'm,
trying to roll out those dollars to others.
All of my social media knows I do... I'm deep in news, so it's trained to show me
on the implementation,
all the biggest stories.
Working as fast as they can. And if you just look at the numbers, so far they've distributed...
I'm usually up on what's happening. I try to, when there's big news, I want to always be like the first to tell Curiouser.
Not all of them.
And she'll be like, I already saw it.
Some of that money is going to safety programs, grants that are meant to be...
I like telling people the news.
And then modernizing the entire mobility corridors with electric vehicles and autonomous technologies. So the money is... having been covering...
Common sense stoner news. I like you a lot, CS.
Being dispersed, the announcements of grants availabilities.
I want to give you an in-depth, substantive news show, but I want it to be fun, funny,
administrations.
Have a little kick in the balls to it.
For transport topics, and we are talking about transportation.
He's kicking authority in the balls.
Specifically on this Getaway Wednesday ahead of Thanksgiving. We welcome your calls and comments. 202-748.
All right, here we go.
The line for Democrats. 202-748-8001 for Republicans, and for independents and others, 202-748-8002. And let us know what form of transportation you're taking. What are some of your concerns as you head out of your family?
The freaking news stoner.
Day before Thanksgiving.
I changed the description to what that news be doing.
Gas Buddy tweeted this morning. The national average has declined to $3.59.
Well, we'll probably move as the show gets bigger. We'll probably move to where the whole show is called the Troll Patrol, but a segment of it will be like trolling the news.
But that $3.59, that's still well above what people were paying last year and certainly in 2019.
Correct. Yeah. So gas prices take a really quick
Then we'll have a free-for-all where we take calls and voice chats and
phenomenon. And at the domestic side, you're right. The national average has been on a downward trend recently. As also, when you look at the diesel price, the national average, I think it was $5.31.
Is it coming down at the same rate as the petroleum price, the gas price?
Well, kind of. There's still some market forces at play. Some commodities analysts are really.
There was rumors that Saudi Arabia was going to go to OPEC about upping production. Saudi Arabia put the kibosh on it and said, no, that's not true. That caused futures to go up slightly.
Stakeholders is that there is some credit to be given for the Biden White House with their policies and negotiations when it comes to releasing barrels from the strategic oil reserve. And all of that is what some of these
right-wingers will accuse Biden of depleting the strategic oil reserve. The way that works is once the barrel of an oil reaches a certain price, it's like a loan, right? So ExxonMobil got X amount of barrels that they then sold on the open market.
The price at the pump did have
but they replenish the strategic national reserve whenever the price of a barrel reaches a certain amount.
Yeah, we saw studies were done in 2004.
There are places where gas is like as low as like $2.40, $2.50 right now.
And,
I don't know what the national average is. They just said it, but we were talking.
And that was attributed. Some analysts did attribute that to the price of gas, especially when you're looking at the commercial transportation.
Price of barrel has been floating around $90 a barrel.
Players in the freight sector reduce their activity. So obviously that's not the commuters, that's not passenger, but it does have a
national average looks to be 360.
When you know that you're going to be paying more at the gas, maybe you're not going to travel several states. You're probably just going to do, go down to
shorter trips.
Yeah, exactly.
Eugene Millar is our guest, and we do have calls waiting. I just want to correct the lines. The lines are
Texas. The average is 290.
Eastern or Central time zone. Your line is 202-748-8000. Mountain and Pacific 202-748-8001. Sorry about the miscue there, but we'll go to Yosef first up in New York City.
Yeah, I thought he was wrong on that. He said Democrat and Republican, but they're asking for Eastern and Central time zones. Mountain and Pacific.
That, we all know that our addiction to oil and gas is a major problem in this country, and that the sooner that we move to renewable energies, solar, wind, hydroelectric, the better off we'll all be, I think, and more independent energy-wise. Thank you, sir.
I would say around 350 would be
on our next segment, but
more on the
point is one that we're hearing often from the Secretary's office at the Department of Transportation. This investments we've seen so far about $20 billion being dedicated for investments to look away from traditional fuel and implement and adopt technologies for other sources of fuel and energies for our transportation systems. That does include electric vehicles, but it's also solar technology, other technologies that are out there that really fall under the umbrella of the administration's efforts on climate change.
Are these deadlines and these new timelines the administration sets, are they really propelling manufacturers to advance their technology in the area, say, of electric vehicles?
That is actually a great point. So in the marketplace, a lot of the manufacturers have already had the technology in place. It was in the regulatory.
We have the technology.
They started getting some obstacles. So there's a lot of technology in the EVs as well as autonomous vehicles that, for a lack of a better term, are ready for prime time.
Right.
But it's just that there's not a national framework on the regulatory side to help facilitate, our adoption, our access to these vehicles.
Is there a national framework, to use your terms,
who is this guy?
How electric vehicles contribute to, say, the national gas tax?
That there's actually studies that were approved as part of the infrastructure law to determine that and to look at the impact that the EVs would have, in regards to, how much they contribute
That
to,
is super cool.
Funding our transportation grid. Because they don't contribute to the gas tax, that is why.
I need to move to a city that has public transportation or is walkable
to make up that money. But there's
because
actually,
I do not have a vehicle.
Programs that would evaluate a vehicle miles travel tax fee, and that's probably the road that if electric vehicles are going to be mainstream.
No. They'll keep taking calls. I got the phone numbers on the screen right now.
Chooses.
Okay, let's hear from Kennard in Baltimore, Maryland. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, America.
Good morning.
Yes, I am a truck driver, and diesel prices are basically in the $6 range. And I travel from Baltimore, and I do New York City or Baltimore to Chesapeake, Virginia. The brokers, they don't give us the right fuel surcharge. 6 months ago, I was getting $2,000 to go to New York. Now they want to give us $1,000 to $1,400. Fuel prices went up, but the price of freight, the haul of freight, doesn't go up. The price of hauling food doesn't go up. Like our prices don't go up for hauling goods in America, but the fuel price goes up. So,
who's making the money?
Look at the diesel prices, and I'm a commuter. But the diesel prices, it hits my pockets. It takes $1,800 to $1,900 to fill my truck up.
So if you ain't making the money and you hauling the shit, who making the money?
Share a sentiment that is really pretty much echoed by.
This is Eugene Maluro, Transportation Topics Senior Congressional Reporter.
An owner-operator.
For a rag called Transport Topics. I'm sorry.
And studies have shown that they are the ones who really are hard hit by when fuel prices do go up. They don't have a cushion as to say, a big carrier, a big company. So his concerns is ones that we hear all the time. The Biden administration has a trucking action plan, and part of that program is to address a lot of the concerns that you hear, especially from these owner-operators.
Let me ask you about the potential
O&Os
strike. This is USA Today. Major rail union rejects
rail strike. Yeah, let's talk about it.
President Biden threatening a strike before the holidays. What are the issues involved here?
Well, 4 of the big unions of the freight rail, they've so far turned down an agreement that was agreed to in September. Not only is it a pay issue according to the union leaders, but also they are still demanding greater assurances on what we call quality of life issues. We're talking paid leave, vacations. There's still some concern that, according to the employees, that they continue to be penalized if they have abrupt leave of absences for family emergencies, let's say, and they want more assurances that these penalizations, will not be severe. They are still holding out. The strike is very possible by the early December. December 9th is the date that everybody's pointing to. The economic hit is projected to be about $2 billion a day.
If there were a strike.
If there was a strike. And also, it's worth, just a little bit of background that freight rail, while they account for 30% of the movement of freight, they pretty much do operate in what is called the first.
The nerve to treat them like
they
human
really
beings.
kind of get the ball rolling. They're the first line of defense in our supply chain. And they do haul, the big chemicals, big materials, raw materials that are needed for construction. But the Biden White House, Secretary of Labor Marty Walsh are still involved in the negotiations, and members of Congress, the transportation leaders on Capitol Hill, they're expected to step in and start having, hearings. And Congress also can come in and enact, pass laws, send them to the White House that would impose, an agreement on these labor unions.
All right, let's hear from Susan in Walton, New York. Welcome.
Good morning, Susan.
And thank you for taking my call. My question is, with the new plans for changing our energy source, if we have to put in solar panels and wind towers, whose land do you suppose will be used for it? And my guess is the poor farmers in America that are hurting right now. I can't see Biden putting solar wind panels in Delaware where he lives, or I can't see them being in California on the coast. So could you...
There are solar panels on the coast, aren't they?
They'd have to do eminent domain.
California.
Most people would not want to sell. And I've seen it done before in my own county, and I've watched people lose their homes, their farms, their jobs, and it's really a scary thing.
Because of wind farms?
The caller does bring up a valid concern, and she's really addressing more of a large-scale, big-picture energy production, and that would be pretty much in the private sector's hand. The big energy producers would then, if there are mandates to, go to solar and, other sources of energy, that would be, if you look at, the way that's been done, that would be a partnership with the federal players and the state agencies in order to get that done. When it gets to the actual homeowner or property owner or a farmer with a big space, that would be more at the local level most of the time, and there will be some compensation in play. But also, especially when you're talking about solar.
You say compensation, but you probably mean like tax credits.
Accommodate the solar equipment and existing infrastructure. So, it's not something that they're going to really create a new solar farm, in a very densely populated area.
Just a reminder of our viewers and listeners of what was in that law that President Biden signed last November. The 1.2 infrastructure law includes $550 billion in new funds for transportation and broadband initiatives and utilities.
Server McGritty, I'm not still on. We came on early. We're trying out a test run, doing Prime Minister's questions and then doing Washington Journal when they take call-ins. Just because this shit is so much fun.
Broadband, $55 billion for improving water.
I'm so into it. Prime Minister's questions was a lot of fun, but it only lasted 30 minutes.
And Eugene,
that shit needs to be an hour.
Biden's infrastructure bill is already in progress, and
the Washington Journal is already on when it ends. So
I would say, my calculations reporting.
Battle Opossum. Good morning.
Of its programs are really well underway. The funding is leaving the doors and already being accessed.
His Majesty, Your Grace, thank you for being a freaking follower. I'm going to give you an amen.
Now that we're entering the year 2 of the enactment of the law, there's a big expectation that a lot of the planning that went on this year, it will come to fruition next year. So a lot of the grants, a lot of free grants. So far we've seen about $200 billion be dedicated nationwide. That number, is going to grow exponentially as we move forward. And Bill, another area, there's 2 other big areas that are part of the law. One of them is safety.
The guests aren't as fun as the calls.
A lot of investments by the Biden administration.
They do take calls.
About $5 billion for
auto safety, pedestrian safety, or
safety for the entire transportation system. To adopt what is known as the complete streets concept, to make sure that streets all over the country are accessible for all users. And then other safety programs at supply chain, commercial space, and all of that is to address the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration's data that determined that last year there was about 43,000 deaths in the nation's highways. That is something that is top of mind. You hear the president, you hear the Secretary of Transportation, as well as transportation stakeholders say that that is a major problem, and ideally the law will respond to that.
Let's go to Savannah, Georgia, and we'll hear from Dave.
Savannah, Georgia, good morning.
Yes, I was calling because I was a railroad engineer for 23 years, and here's the heart of what's going on with the possible rail strike.
Give me that beep, beep.
It all comes down to work-life issues. The railroad implemented something called precision scheduled railroading back in 2019. What that meant was that you had all these hedge fund people come into the railroad. They wanted to boost profits.
Yeah,
and
fuck those
that
people.
Was that they had to lay off at least 30% of the railroad workforce. Okay, the remaining members were subject to draconian work rules, which meant that if you was off from work for any reason, being sick, having a family emergency, if you were off more than once a month, then you were subject to dismissal. The rules out there that the guys are working under now are so harsh that nobody wants to work for the railroad. And this is why you're having the problems. The people that are left are having to basically work under slave labor type arrangements.
Preach it, brother.
This is why we're having a problem.
Okay, David. Eugene.
I have heard, I want to, David, his candor is one that I have heard already from other, individuals involved in the freight rail negotiations. The union leaders do say that the conditions had been very harsh, especially when you look at, work-life balance, quality life.
I don't know if I like his tie. That pattern would make a better pair of golf pants.
About getting penalized for missing work. All of that remains part of the negotiations. While you have the freight railroads saying that there are, listening to the unions and already accommodating a lot of their concerns, nevertheless, we still, and this is why there's we're looking at a potential strike.
Come on, man.
Before unions continue to sound the alarm, raise concerns about, quality of life issues.
So one of your recent, actually yesterday article at Transport Topics is not a holiday getaway story, but it's about the theft of catalytic converters. And
That's right.
The headline, Senate bill targets catalytic converters. Briefly, what's the...
Yeah, I only know about this through memes. What the fuck is going on with catalytic converters?
They're stolen because they have rare earth materials. They're very valuable in the black market. They are very easy, according to law enforcement, very easy to steal, and they're very valuable. And there's actually a growing epidemic in the big cities. There's a lot of big. The numbers are pretty high when it comes to this issue, and there's legislation on the House and recently in the Senate.
So there's catalytic converters.
Require the manufacturers to stamp a vehicle identification number on these catalytic converters. They don't have that right now because they just see it as a piece of the car.
So it would be prevented from being resold in that case.
Correct.
Yeah.
So then when you start to reselling it, you can, a used car delarship can just.
Oh, so these people aren't like smelting it down.
The actual car, that would be a red flag.
All right, let's hear from Charles in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm sorry, Charles, go ahead. There you are.
Morning, guys.
Good morning.
Mr. Malero, 1.2 trillion should be sort of a life-changing amount of money. I mean, it should make a huge impact on America. Donald Trump talked a lot about old airports, bridges falling down, our need to replace,
the bridges
road
falling
systems
down,
and that sort of thing. I know that you wake up every day and you study this bill and you study transportation. Can you tell us the top?
No, there are over 40,000 bridges that are structurally deficient in this country.
Is going to fund.
It scares the shit out of me.
Life. And when are those projects going to be started? And they're going to have a groundbreaking to announce when they're getting started.
So props on this dude asking a good question.
This money has very little infrastructure in it. It's just a big payoff for lobbyists. But maybe you can tell us, what are the 5 projects that are going to change our life with $1.2 trillion that we're going to have to pay for?
All right, Charles.
I love being put on the spot. Very, very easily, I can think of 3 major national projects.
We had a couple crazy right before you got here, Sky Comet.
New Jersey.
I swear.
That is passenger rail tunnels under the Hudson River.
Right.
There is money.
Isn't that a project they've been working on for like 10, 15 years now?
Being dedicated for that project as part of the enactment of this law. And that would benefit not only the economies of those two states and New York City, but also travel that go through the New
York City
all the way to New England. The estimates on the economic impact, vary. They're saying extremely significant to that economy in the Northeast. Another project will be bridges around the country. There's 48,000, give or take, structurally deficient bridges.
If I learned anything from the Judds, it was that love can build a bridge.
Been in need of repairs, and
Eugene, don't you think it's time?
Economic corridors. One of them I can think of is the.
Don't you think it's time?
In Kentucky, Ohio, and that one is one of the bridges is getting aid right now. And then another project these are projects. Is when it comes to the supply chain, our supply chain, the vulnerabilities of which were really highlighted during the pandemic, and the transportation agencies have identified, and the Biden White House also has identified a lot of ways to reform and improve our supply chain at the ports. What this law does is dedicate, I want to say, 25, give or take, $1 billion for port infrastructure to modernize them so they can expedite the movement of freight so it can get faster to people's stores, etc.
We will have to have you back to update as the spending continues on that infrastructure bill. Eugene Malero is Transport
Eugene,
senior congressional reporter. Thanks for
have a good morning.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. You too.
Still ahead here on the program as we focus on getaway
calls
ahead of Thanksgiving. Up next, we'll take a closer look at the electric vehicle industry. Joe Britton is with the Zero Emission Transportation Association. Later, Reuters' David Shepardson joins us. He'll talk about the state of U.S. airline industry and the outlook for the holiday travel season.
David Shepardson. Looks like his head is too small for his body.
Black Friday, the biggest shopping event.
Even C-SPAN has a Black Friday sale going on. What is going on in this world? That is the latest stage capitalism is just too much. You can get you a Democrat or a Republican T-shirt.
C-SPAN fan for the holidays, and
you can get you the American History TV T-shirt. That is the spin-off television show from American History X. Edward Norton's life after his little brother died.
Wall Street trader turned photojournalist.
He actually he goes to a different city and gets a roommate, and it becomes a buddy comedy.
It was a Sunday morning, I believe.
American History TV on C-SPAN.
All the semis were gone, and she was in the industrial part of Hunts Point.
Edward Norton is a fantastic actor.
Their intelligence just kind of came right through. And we spoke for about an hour, half an hour or so.
I swear this is gonna be the role that gets him his Emmy.
It's like a cliche.
Lenny, good evening.
And
oh, wait a minute. Fucking I said good evening.
I asked her what I asked everybody I photographed.
It is not evening. Good morning.
How do you want me to describe you? Give me one sentence describe you. And she just shot back. She said, I think it was like.
I thought that was Jeff Bridges there for a second. It is totally not. It's a buddy comedy with Ed Norton.
You can also listen to Q&A as a podcast, where you get your podcasts.
I may be too slap happy to do a stream this early in the morning.
Watch in the next weeks as the incoming 118th Congress
C-SPAN tickles me too much.
Greets its new members and sets an agenda for January 2023. Meanwhile, the outgoing 117th Congress uses its final.
What kind of weird depravity is this?
Judicial nominations.
It's just as soon as I say that, Maynard pops through the door.
On December 16th. Live on the C-SPAN networks. And
you like some depravity, buddy?
Video app or
He came in, looked at the bowl, and there was nothing in it. He was not impressed.
There are a lot of places to get political information, but only at C-SPAN do you get it straight from the source. No matter where you are from.
Oh, I think I'm sleepy too, but I'm trying to pull an all dayer.
Unfiltered, unbiased, word for word. If it happens here, or here, or here, or anywhere that matters, America is watching on C-SPAN, powered by cable.
I'm not usually up when Curiouser gets home from work.
Next, we're joined by Joe Britton, who's the executive.
No. I'm ducking out here shortly. We're going on a little mini vacay. We won't be on again until Sunday evening.
Vehicle infrastructure. Tell us about the ZETA, Z-E-T-A.
I think I earned it after the election coverage.
Well, Bill, thanks for having me. So we represent the entire supply chain. So we have manufacturers like Tesla and Rivian, Lucid, Lordstown. But then we have utilities, charging companies, critical mineral developers, and then also the battery manufacturers and recyclers. And our goal, what brings us all together, is trying to attain 100% EV sales by the year 2030. And so the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which you talked about last half hour, and then the Inflation Reduction Act are all going to do an enormous amount towards accelerating that transition.
So your association is, you mentioned celebrating its 2-year anniversary here. How is it going in terms of, you saw the infrastructure bill pass, obviously, in terms of reception from not only lawmakers but regulators as well?
Well, we've actually contributed to some of the performance and emission standards work that NHTSA and EPA have done, but congressionally, I think
Should I have coffee?
Space, it's an ascendant sector, but by and large, it's this new manufacturing corridor. So everybody is seeing job growth. So you have the traditional automotive sector. So let's say Michigan and Ohio. But if you look further south, you've got Kentucky, Tennessee.
My tummy was feeling funny a few
in Arkansas and Kansas
hours
really
ago.
Out the number of
coffee is always a crap shoot. Literally.
It's the battery manufacturing that's part of it. Tell us about some of the newer ones that are opening up across the country.
I'm a bit of a coffee snob.
2 days ago, a $2.3 billion plant in Tennessee.
Oh, fucking A. I do kind of want coffee.
Really great job recruiting in and seeing manufacturing growth. Governor Bill Lee actually said that these investments are some of the biggest economic investments in the state's history. You're also seeing announcements in Arkansas and Kansas, like I mentioned. Panasonic had a big announcement in Kansas, but these are billions of dollars and thousands of jobs, and obviously everybody wants to be a part of that.
Yeah, I drive down 85 every now and then in Georgia, and near Commerce, there's a huge battery plant down there. It must be like a million plus square feet.
Yeah, I visited the Tesla Gigafactory in Austin, and it was stunning how much work is being done there and just the sheer size of the effort.
So is this being driven by President Biden's announcement last year of the 50% EVs by what is it, 2030?
Well, I think the Biden administration has really leaned in, and they deserve a lot of credit. I also think the market itself is driving this. So you've got the manufacturers that are now newly committing to go fully electric. And I think there's some ascendant pressure that the full pure play EV companies, the ones that we represent, are applying because they're taking on the incumbents and doing things in more innovative and efficient ways. And so there's a race going on, and it's not just in the U.S. There's a global race to win the clean transportation sector, because we obviously want to be reshoring our supply chains, having the innovation and manufacturing done here instead of being behind the curve and importing that. And we don't have to actually look very far back to see what happened when you fall behind. So if you look in the 2005-2006 range, you had gas price spikes, and all of a sudden Americans decided that more fuel efficient foreign imports were better, and so that's what in part led to the big three auto bailout. And so we want to get ahead of this.
We're going to have a line here for those of you who own electric or electric hybrid vehicles here. So we open our phone lines for Joe Britton, who's head of the executive director of the Zero Emissions Transportation Association. The lines are regional, 2027-488-8000 for the Eastern and Central time zones, 2027-488-8001, Mountain and Pacific. And again, if you own an EV, that line, 2027-488-8002. We'd love to hear your experience. Tell us about your observations about the public demand for EVs, and has that been driven more by the gas price surge in the last 9 months or so?
Well, I think it certainly helped. We actually did a study, so we compared the AAA gas prices to the Energy Information Agency electricity pricing, and in most states, it's about 4 to 6 times more expensive to drive a gas-powered car, and obviously as gas prices spiked, that generated more pocketbook interest for folks to go electric. But I think the other thing that's really, to me, what is really going to be driving growth in the sector is new vehicles that look and feel like the kind of vehicles that Americans expect when they're going to work or to soccer practice. And so you're seeing the actual sector diversify and offering more vehicles. And so I think that's going to drive a ton of new interest.
Are those vehicles performing the way that people want them to? Are they? You know, we see electric trucks. We see the Ford.
Sorry, I don't get to talk to her that often.
The electric version.
We actually don't see each other that often.
I drive a Rivian R1T pickup. I absolutely love it. And as you know, the power in each of these EVs.
Why are you coming in here talking about your truck, dude?
So if you think the gas.
Did somebody ask about your truck?
The performance of the vehicles, and then they're just innovative products, right? So it's just a superior product, and I think people that experience them.
Why men always want to talk about their trucks?
They never go back to an internal combustion engine vehicle, and so as you can imagine,
I used to have an awesome truck.
Address the concerns that people would have about buying an electric vehicle, especially on a weekend like this, where you're going, maybe you're traveling 300 miles, and how often do you have to recharge? Are there enough recharging stations across the country to accommodate all of the travelers who will be out, many of whom will be traveling this weekend?
So I've actually done it a couple times. I've driven from Nebraska and DC and back. I actually flew to Normal, Illinois to pick up my pickup and drove it back to DC. Really what people, I think, you know, it's kind of a mentality shift. So we're used to, you know, driving to an empty, stopping for 5 minutes, filling up and moving on. This is actually a little different in that you're going to be charging when you stop. And so, you know, for the normal EV, you could probably drive 4 or 5 hours without stopping.
I fucking love coffee. Oh my God, it's so good.
Out the vehicle, you want to stop and eat, use the restroom, and you know, stretch your legs. And so if you stop where there's charging, you never really are impeded in your trip. So it's really a matter of just, you know, taking that mentality. You're going to be charging from 30% to 60%. You're eating lunch. You're going from 50 to 90. It's really not that 0 to 100 that you experience with a gas-powered vehicle.
Is there any data from your organization or elsewhere on the
I think we should have been like the market solution
I don't have
when it comes to
and this is something that I've experienced.
The changeover.
You're charging for 10 or 15 minutes. You're stopping.
That window has passed.
You're stretching your legs and you're moving on. And obviously, if you're going to be, you know, somewhere eating lunch for an hour, you've got plenty of charging. That can be a level 2 charger.
I mean, I'm not going to be the one that like brings up my dick. If somebody else asks about my dick, I'll talk about my dick.
Jonna in Oak Ridge, Tennessee.
Ain't shy.
Good morning. So nice to hear that we're building a battery factory in my neighborhood almost. We just want to say that we love our Tesla. We have a Model S, and it's our number 2. We had another one before, which had a little shorter range. We drive all the way to Nova Scotia and back every summer, and we never have
damn Tesla owners sniffing their own farts.
And we can't recommend this Tesla enough. We will never buy a non-electric car again.
All right. Joe Britton.
Well, thanks, John. Actually, one of the things that I think is really exciting is not only do you enjoy the vehicle, but your community is going to be the recipient of these new manufacturing jobs. And I think, you know, everybody can celebrate that. And that's one of the nice things about EVs is that there's huge public interest. We haven't even talked about the emissions reduction yet, but everybody will be better off, even those that never get behind the wheel of an EV. And that's really what we're excited about.
That's one of the environmental benefits of EVs. The downside, though, is the batteries themselves, the potential, the rare earth minerals that are needed. There's both the environmental challenge and a national security challenge in terms of finding where we source those rare earth minerals, and then the mining involved to get those minerals. Is that a fair trade-off?
Well, I think we're doing a lot to reshore the supply chain. So part of
can we not have kids mining the fucking lithium?
If you want to be eligible for these tax credits, you have to meet increasingly stringent domestic content requirements. And there's a host of lithium production sites that are coming online. There's Rhyolite Ridge.
There's here in the United States.
In the United States, Rhyolite Ridge and Thacker Pass in Nevada. You've got the Silver Peak mine in Nevada. You've got Kings Mountain in the Carolinas. We actually just opened up a cobalt development and refining location in Idaho. So we're doing our best best, and everybody wants to reshore their supply chains. But I think the thing that is really dramatic about this is that once you have those minerals, one, it's not like a gallon of gasoline.
Good morning.
Forever, and the only lingering impact are the climate impacts. You get to reuse that over and over again, and then once you go to like a second life or a recycling environment, you get to reclaim 95% of those minerals and put them back into a new battery pack. So I think there's a huge circularity and environmental benefit.
In the oldest EVs that are out there, what's the typical lifespan of a battery?
Well, so actually many of these batteries are going to outlast the chassis. And actually, so one of the challenges of recycling is that, at scale, the recyclers won't get these big battery packs until 2040. So right now they're working off of iPhones and Duracells. And so as more of these age out, we'll actually be able to take fuller advantage of
You
the
totally think it was your dick, RV.
Patricia calling Christiansburg, Virginia. Good morning.
Good
Yours
morning.
said she did indeed have cocoa. Like, had multiple
What are they
flavors.
going to do about the poor people and the people that are retired and on fixed incomes? They
poor
can't
people.
afford these cards. They're so expensive. And then the batteries, to put another battery in, a new battery, they're expensive too.
Residue.
And also, like it happened in Virginia, they had that snowstorm and people were trapped on the interstate. How are they going to charge these batteries? And they're always working on the interstates. And how are they going to charge these cars when they're sitting there?
But there wasn't a problem when they were stuck in the snow.
On their battery.
Okay, several points there. Joe Britton.
Well, Patricia, there's actually three things that I would note. One is that the batteries themselves are likely to outlast the car. I actually don't think we're going to see battery swapping in electric vehicles. And in fact, it'll go to secondary life, where you'll take the battery packs out when the car itself is at its end of life. The battery will go into stationary storage and provide a grid resource. The other element of the snowstorm in Virginia, actually a reporter went because there was some intrigue about, what if you were an electric vehicle? I happened to be an electric vehicle in that snowstorm. I didn't get stuck on 95. But your electric vehicle is not running an engine. So in an internal combustion engine, your car is running that entire time. In an EV,
Stop animal murder and torture. Good morning.
It can last longer in those circumstances.
So glad to see
than
you.
an average internal combustion engine vehicle. And then for the affordability, it's true, new cars are expensive, and I think that's part of what people experience.
There are a lot of EVs coming online that are not Tesla. Ford and Chevy both have their models. I think there's like a Subaru that's supposed to be really cool that's an EV.
And so demographically and income-wise, yes, if you're a new car buyer, there's certain income and demographic characteristics of that buyer, but we want to reach more and more consumers, and I think the used EV credit and rentals and fleet and lease vehicles, that's going to really expand.
What he said is you would take your battery out of your car and
we're not going to go back.
It would go into a grid resource.
On electric vehicle and hybrid plug-in sales from the Energy Department. Electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid EV sales doubled from 308,000 in 2020 to 608,000 in 2021. They accounted for 73% of all plug-in electric vehicle sales in 2021.
I like car culture. Like I've been playing Gran Turismo. Like it's very much like a celebration of car culture.
In 2021 from 2020.
I guess that shit needs to be lived out in like video games.
Yes, good morning. I'd just like to say that I find it very distasteful that a person like myself, a working individual, who couldn't afford
a working man.
A new vehicle, subsidizes people who are rich enough to buy a new vehicle. It just seems to be another way they take money from the working man and give it to somebody else. It's a normal thing that they do
Call
here in the
him the working man.
And really, to me, it sucks. That's all I got to say.
What are manufacturers doing, Joe Britton, to address the affordability of their vehicles?
Well, so prior to I think some of the supply chain constraints, we actually.
Joe Britton is insulted because he feels like he's a working man.
The cost of the battery, and that's down from $100. So at $100 a kilowatt hour, that's intended to be, or most people think that's price parity with internal combustion engine vehicles. So we were careening down. I think the supply chain constraints and the blockage in the Suez Canal and Ukraine and COVID has all, I think, delayed some of that price parity.
Yeah.
But it's really not just about the new vehicles, and that's why the Inflation Reduction Act is providing a credit for used EVs. But the thing that I think is important to remember is that there's
Washington Journal is a lot like the Troll Patrol. You get your substantive content along with your like batshit crazy stuff.
New investment in his
Perfect.
community, those billions of dollars and thousands of jobs being created. So it's not just people that sit behind the wheel of an EV that accrue those public benefits, and I think that's why there's a real strong public interest in the investment in the space.
Next up is Jeff in Richmond, Indiana.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi, my name's Jeff Mullins. Yeah, I'm a mechanic.
Jeff Mullins, no relation.
Electricity stuff. When you go out and you go up and down hills, it causes that battery to drain a lot more. And then if they get in a wreck and that water gets into that battery explodes within a matter of seconds. Now, why ain't anybody talking about the dangers of it instead of talking about, oh, how good?
When you go up hills, it drains your battery.
That you guys ain't even talking about the dangers of it. Now, why don't you be truthful and talk about how much energy it takes to be able to pull a load and do things like that? You're talking about...
Tell us about your load, Joe.
And if there's thousands of people out on the road for like Thanksgiving, how many people's going to be able to line up and get into them charging systems like you're saying? That's all I got to say.
Well, there's several things there, Jeff, but Joe Britton, if you would address the safety of the batteries, and you talked about exploding batteries. There have been obviously a number of high-profile news reports on that over the last number of years.
Well, so we went and looked at the data. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, they did an analysis, and for every 100,000 vehicles that are on the road, for EVs, you're going to have 25 thermal events or fires. If in an internal combustion engine vehicle, you're going to have 1,530 fires, and so you're actually 62 times more likely to have a fire in an internal combustion engine vehicle than an EV. And on the
Britain laying down the facts.
Energy that's needed to go uphill and then downhill, the regenerative braking for EVs is actually part of the efficiency. So when you're going downhill,
has that data been normalized?
So instead of the brakes themselves keeping the vehicle from careening out of control, it's actually the regenerative braking that provides a force that then you actually can take that energy and recharge the battery. So I'm receptive to the concerns, but if you look at the data, it's just a different story.
A tweet here from Mike says, Domino's commits to 800 Chevy Bolt EV delivery cars. Smart business. This is the revolution. Thoughtful people celebrate.
Domino's provides cars to their pizza delivery people
and local agencies, etc. Catching on to.
I thought like the kids just put a sign on top of their car.
Actually, there's a group called EV100. It's a commitment from top 100 companies to go electric. But I actually don't think it's an.
I didn't think so, Residue.
I think it's a dollars and cents. You know, like I said, it's 5 to 6 times more expensive to drive your vehicle on gasoline rather than electricity. And so, you know, for these fleet operators, they're pretty sophisticated. They know, you know, what the normal route is. FedEx, for example, is going to go fully electric. Hertz is now offering electric vehicles. So it's really a savings, and it's not just the fuel. If you think about the maintenance and service, there's really only 5 or 6 moving parts to an EV compared to an internal combustion engine vehicle where there's 120 moving parts that can go wrong. So you just have an enormous savings.
I want to see the time frame when we race internal combustion engines.
Hey,
that's where you see those things perform.
Hey, yeah.
Hey, CSPAN. Good morning.
Issues on the electric cars. Two of them is the weight of the car, the vehicle, and the second is just the cost of them. They're ridiculous. If you Tesla, you can't afford a Tesla under $60,000, $65,000, and that new is Pulsar from Volvo. They got electric one, and I think it's about $70,000. It's pretty expensive, but
that Tulsi
they're
car.
Here to stay. They're not going anywhere. They're going to be making them. And one more last thing, Ford Motor Company is 2 years behind on their electric trucks.
Just
if you order a truck from them, it's going to take you 2 years before you get it. And, you know, that's going to take away a lot of sales. I mean, people are going to walk out the door when they hear that. And, you know, but...
All right, Joe Britton.
Well, supply chain constraints, like we've said, are a challenge, and that's why you'll see some delays. I think it's good to have a lot of interest in EVs, but really what we need to be focused on is driving down the costs. And we talked a little bit about it earlier, but there's an enormous investment being made by the automotive OEMs, the manufacturers, to lightweight components and parts, have increased efficiency in the battery, and so I think that's really where we're targeted. I think the thing that, just to be fair, new vehicles are expensive, and actually you can find 5 or 6 EVs that cost less than the average price of a sedan. So it's really about some of the market choices that people face. I'm most excited about the used EV credit because, again, it's allowing people from all income levels to experience electrification.
If you're a consumer, you're going out looking at a gas-powered or diesel-powered vehicle and an EV or EV plug-in hybrid, what are the metrics that you should be measuring? What are you looking at to compare?
Well, I mean, I think the vehicle itself, people need to figure out what works for them and their family. Then you're going to look at range. Obviously, range is an important part of people's considerations. But I happen to look at the offering for the vehicle. Is it got the space?
I wish we didn't have such a car-centric society, and that we had high-speed rail, that we had
combustion engine vehicle. But you're really making
robust public transit, multiple forms within the city.
I don't think it's a materially different buying experience, but again, you're going to have access to that fuel maintenance and service.
I wish we were not so dependent
I think
upon
sometimes
cars.
that can be, that upfront cost can be a challenge, but we actually, not many people buy their new.
He is talking about a used EV credit.
You have a monthly payment, so if you're paying $50 more for the vehicle itself, but then you're saving $200 a month on fuel maintenance and service, it's easy for people to see the savings.
Next is Gary in Newport, Kentucky.
What up, Gary? Good morning.
I don't think you're ever really going to eradicate oil usage, but in gasoline. But question: okay, you go in and you do stop and have a meal, use the restroom or whatever. Who controls the prices on these charging stations? I mean, if there's one out in the middle of the desert somewhere and you got to stop and charge, they pretty well got you on the price there.
Got you by the balls, Gary.
It's a good point. Typically, it's the site hosts. So, there's a host of different kind of ownership models. I will tell you that, again, like I said, it's about 5 to 6 times cheaper to propel your vehicle on electricity rather than gasoline. That's if you're charging at home. You do typically, and this has been from my experience as well, if you're using a supercharger or those fast chargers that are along transportation corridors, they are more expensive. But we've seen that that's still about half the price of what you would spend on gasoline.
How do they charge them when you hook up and charge?
Well, there's a couple different models. So you can do time-based charging, which some people do, but then there's also that will just meter it, so it's per kilowatt hour.
All right, to Bill calling from Bryan, Ohio. Go ahead.
Yeah.
What up, Bill? Good morning.
What is it, Joe, is it?
Joe, yes.
I'd like to talk about the life of the battery. And the way I've been taught, knowing the lithium batteries, and I'm not sure that these are what they are, but the short charging and the intermittent charging, like we've been told you can do, it just seems to me like the batteries get a memory, don't they? And won't it turn into a half of a battery or have half its life? Or if you don't fully charge it each time, I don't understand how the battery can respond to that.
Well, so the thing that you want to do, typically with an EV is you want to charge to 80 or 90%. The life of the battery, it will be at its healthiest if you're doing, level 1 or level 2 charging, which again is the same kind of residential charging, same as like an outlet in your home. Level 2 would be a 240 volt, same as your electric dryer. So that, the slower charging is healthier for the battery. If you're doing the fast charging, there will be some small degradation over time. I actually think that most people will never notice any of the degradation. It's going to be small single-digit percentage points over time. But because again, the battery is going to outlast the vehicle and it's going to go to secondary life. So, the vehicle itself will probably come to its end of life before the battery, and then you'll have it stacked as part of utility scale grid storage. And so,
you gotta yeet the car before you yeet the battery.
Something that we probably over-focus on, but
translate for the kids.
A healthy battery, and actually Cox Automotive is developing technology.
Cox Automotive
for the battery, so that when you're buying a used EV, you can see, is it 2% degradation? Is
you
it 3?
live in
Again, I don't think
sexual
it's going to be a
anarchy.
material impediment to used EVs.
A viewer in Middletown, Connecticut, William, has a concern. He says, Mr. Britton, my largest concern is...
Well, Sparkles always said you threw the battery in the ocean.
Batteries. How is this undertaking
back to where it was birthed out of?
Humans nearby.
Well, so the nice thing, it's not like a glass Coke bottle that, somebody might toss away and you really have to, search for somebody interested in collecting it. There's going to be $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 of value in the battery pack. And so there's going to be a huge economic incentive to make sure we collect it and that we get that in the hands of a recycler, because those minerals, like we talked about earlier, you can get 95% of the minerals back out, and that doesn't need to be then extracted minerals either here or abroad. So there's a huge opportunity. And I think, the administration is looking about how do we, organize the circularity? How do we make sure that the collection is efficient? But we are going to recycle these batteries. If we're not going to put them, like I said, Second Life is a very material part of their life, but we are going to put these batteries.
I haven't played that one. Is that the sequel to Half-Life?
But an enormous lost economic opportunity.
All right, next up for our guest, Joe Britton, is Barb.
Chop it down with the edge of your hand.
Yeah. Barb, there you are. Go ahead.
Yes, hello. My question is a little bit political.
What did you dice the car with? What are you? Was it a sword?
The infrastructure bill and the climate bill, and yet I see many of these huge manufacturing sites located in red states like Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, and I just wonder,
tax incentives.
Thinking about that, are these major sites of electric vehicles and stuff? Is it distributed evenly over the United States, or
with a sword?
Am I mistaken about these southern states? Just seems Kentucky.
Or is that just my imagination running wild? You fucking chopping up cars with a sword.
Right. I would note that the bipartisan infrastructure bill that included $7.5 billion in infrastructure and charging investments
would have been more fun with a sword.
But I agree with you. It is a notable part of the new EV manufacturing corridor that it's no longer just Michigan and Ohio, those kind of that northern area. But you're going to see, like you said, Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, the Carolinas, enormous investments. And I think that's what's really, compelling about EVs is that it's, again, not just about the driver, the person behind the wheel. It's about that full value chain and the public interest that we're driving. So people may come to EVs for a lot of different reasons. Some people might drive electric because they're interested in emissions reduction and environmental impact. Some people might do it for cost savings. Some people might do it for performance. But I think a lot of people, especially in this new Congress, are going to be interested in EVs because of the battery manufacturing, the jobs, and then obviously the mineral development that we have the opportunity to do a better job of reshoring here in America.
We'll hear from Brian, who owns an EV. He's calling from Pottstown.
Brian, good money. Good money.
Hello, Bill and Joe. I have.
Good morning, Brian.
I have two plug-in hybrids, and then I've had an old Prius from 2004, which I keep track of because a family member is still driving it. And that battery is still going strong from 2004. Can you guys hear me?
We can. Yeah. We hear you just fine.
Okay. And the...
he keeps saying the battery is going to outlive the car.
Short term is going to be plug-in hybrids because then you don't have any range anxiety. And each time my hobby is batteries, and I'm looking out at an old
This dude diddles batteries, doesn't he? He like sticks them up his ass, puts them on his dick,
and
sticks them under his balls.
Worried about the battery and the hydrostatic transmission went. But the other thing people forget when you talk about the regenerative braking, it's kind of fun to use the control panel and see the mileage come back when you go down a long hill. It's just fun.
It's just fun.
Term range anxiety, Joe Britton. What is that?
Well, so it's
you live in sexual
it's the
anarchy.
Sense that I may run out of charge, right? How far can I drive?
Yeah.
I'm going on that cross-country trip. I'm going to Grandma's house for Thanksgiving. Will I be able to make it? The average American drives between 30 and 40 miles per day. And so if you were to think about a 200, 300, 400 mile range, that's plenty for your average operating. Certainly if you've got charging at home and you wake up every day with a full charge. But that's why we're making these investments across the transportation.
Can we get charging? We have charging at home.
As part of the bipartisan infrastructure bill.
Do not stick batteries up your ass.
Into those corridors, so that if you're doing those longer trips.
We've been doing public service announcements. I've been telling people to get their prostate examined,
on the
get your mammogram, get your STD test.
Bjorn Lomborg of the Copenhagen Institute, who wrote in this piece, policies pushing electric vehicles show why few people want one. He writes that electric cars are often a luxury item. 2/3 of the households in the U.S. that own one have incomes exceeding $100,000 a year. For 9 of 10 electric vehicle-owning households, it's only a second car. They also have a gasoline-powered car, usually a bigger one, such as an SUV, pickup truck, or minivan that they use for long trips, given its longer range. And it takes additional costs to make electric cars convenient, such as installing a charger in your garage. Those who can't afford it or don't have a garage will have to spend a lot more time at commercial chargers than it takes to fill up a car with gasoline. That is why electric cars still require such massive subsidies to sell. Do you agree with that?
Well, just to be clear, the Copenhagen Institute is the front group for the oil and gas sector, and they have a strong incentive in keeping us locked into a carbon-intensive transportation system. And so it doesn't surprise me that they would be, picking a fight on all these issues and trying to use scare tactics. But I will tell you, people
it was in the Wall Street Journal.
Very happy. 95% of the time, they never go back. Really, the investment from the public sector, why we're passing these tax credits, it's not about the driver. This is not about, providing a really nice product to any one consumer. It's about those public benefits. And the public benefits are the emissions reduction, which accrue not only for the climate change, but also public health, the pollution that's going into our communities because of these internal combustion engine vehicles. You may not feel it in your community, but for many communities that live along transportation corridors or in industrial areas, it is a severe and acute public health interest, certainly for asthma within kids. So we spend lots of money as a federal government to address healthcare and address emissions reduction.
I didn't have any bump or
manufacturing. That's the point of these credits. It's not about the driver. It's about the public benefits that everybody, is the recipient of, whether or not they ever get behind the wheel of an EV.
The organization is the Zero Emission Transportation Association. We've been speaking with their executive director, Joe Britton. Thanks for...
Yeah, kick Joe out of here.
Bill,
no more Joe.
Yeah,
see ya.
I hope we're very safe out there this weekend.
Have a good morning. Go get you a latte.
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles Getaway Day on Washington Journal. The planes part of it. We'll be joined by David Shepardson coming up next. He'll join us to talk about the state of the U.S. airline industry and the outlook for the holiday travel season.
You get ads on Twitch. I don't know, Producer told me she was going to take a shower. I don't know that she ever did.
This holiday season, try
Did I keep going?
C-SPAN has to offer. On Q&A, you'll listen
more and more people just keep coming in.
Authors writing books on history and subjects that matter. Learn something new.
I'm definitely out of coffee, though.
Conversations with nonfiction authors and historians. Afterwards brings together best-selling nonfiction authors with influential interviewers for wide-ranging, hour-long conversations. And on About Books, we talk about the business of books with news and interviews about the publishing industry and nonfiction authors. Find all of our podcasts by downloading the free C-SPAN Now app or wherever you get your podcasts. Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern, C-SPAN brings you Afterwards from Book TV, a program where nonfiction authors are interviewed by journalists, legislators, and more on their latest books. This week, Dallas Mavericks CEO Cint Marshall shares her memoir, You've Been Chosen, about her life and career as the first Black female CEO in the NBA. She's interviewed by Michael Lee of The Washington Post. Watch Afterwards every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern on C-SPAN. Book TV every Sunday on C-SPAN 2 features leading authors discussing their latest nonfiction books. At 2 p.m. Eastern, a discussion about the qualities that make great military and civilian leaders with retired Army Lieutenant General Robert Foley, author of Standing Tall, John Davis and his book Combat to College, and Raymond James Raymond, author of Elite Souls. Then at 8 p.m., former Penn State President Graham Spanier provides his account of the Penn State child abuse sex scandal with his book In the Lion's Den. Watch Book TV every Sunday on C-SPAN 2 and find a full schedule on your program guide or watch online anytime at booktv.org. Washington Journal continues.
And ahead of Thanksgiving, this Getaway Wednesday, we're going to talk about the state of the airline industry next. Joining us is a reporter who's covered the transportation industry for quite a number of years now with Reuters. David Shepardson, welcome back to Washington Journal.
Thanks, Bill.
Are we, in terms of airline travel, this 2022 Thanksgiving weekend, do you think it'll be back to pre-pandemic levels for airline travel?
I think it'll be pretty close. It won't quite hit that 2019 levels. The TSA estimates, the Transportation Security Administration, roughly 2.5 million passengers per day. I don't think it'll hit
Tadpole,
which was the Sunday after Thanksgiving in 2019, when there were 2.9 million passengers traveling.
Good morning.
It's very close to that, to those numbers. Airlines are flying,
Who's this dude?
Flights they did in
David Shepardson. I don't like you.
Bigger planes, so the number of seats is pretty close to where it was in 2019.
Well, we certainly saw the pace of airlines
kind of look like Beaker
up over the summer vacation season, but also encountered the fact of higher fuel costs, pilot shortages still facing airlines. Are those issues still a factor for airlines?
Is that the one I'm thinking of, or was it the MEEP one?
Airlines are still racing to get more, pilots, more flight attendants, just workers across the industry, and especially among regional air carriers are struggling to get enough pilots, and there are still a number of flights, airports that are not being serviced because there are not enough pilots, especially at the lower end. Now there is some dispute over that. Some of the pilots unions argue it's the regional carriers should pay more, and they also, strongly oppose this idea that some
put some orange puff hair on that dude. He looked just like Beaker.
Standards, requiring fewer hours of service for the second in command on flights. So, and then of course jet fuel has been a very high cost for airlines.
Well, let me tell you something, buddy. Jet fuel does not melt steel beams.
Those two factors have certainly put a lot of upward pressure on the price of tickets, and certainly people are feeling that this week or through the holiday season as they look to buy tickets.
Are travelers also seeing fewer choices in terms of where they can fly to, with some airports, some flights not available that had been previously available from airlines?
Airlines suck, so yeah, probably.
There are some, banks of flights that maybe were cut back, but I think in general, sort of on the biggest routes between hubs, you're seing most.
It is afternoon for you, Tadpole.
Return certainly to very.
You another one of those Europeans.
Florida, for example. There are places, especially some smaller airports, where the number of flights have been cut. But
we did Prime Minister's questions earlier.
Where we were pre-pandemic in terms of those flight options.
David Shepardson with us with Reuters. We're talking about the state of the airline industry.
Oh, that's awesome.
In hearing from you.
You got like an ad blocker that still counts the ads for me. That's fucking cool.
For those of you in the Eastern and Central time zones, 202-748-8001, Mountain and Pacific. And if you're flying,
I try to make sure they play all at once, get them out of the way, nobody misses any content.
Or your experience in doing that, or booking your flight. Back on the service level, David Shepardson, the Regional Airlines Association, most recent report on airports that are being served, they say that 76% of U.S. airports have either diminished or lost air service.
You got a 76.6%.
Between 2019 and 2020.
73.6%.
161 U.S. airports lost
66 and 2/3%
of their commercial flights. Small and medium-sized communities are affected the most. Is some of this still really just...
I never did make my Steiner math
the COVID
graphic. I really need that.
I think that's right. And again, you did see, airlines offer early retirements. They got government funding to help with payroll costs, but they were still...
I shouldn't make fun of this dude's lack of chin.
Their costs. So as a result, you did see an uptick in pilot retirement.
I'm gonna start carrying Prime Minister's questions.
Recover from. And I do think
it was fun.
Noting that the top 35.
I like them yelling at each other. I like the old speaker in the back that's like, "Oh no, tally ho! You violated the rules. Now let this guy speak for a little bit now."
Of the reduction, but the reality is that in terms of total flights, those biggest airports are not safe.
I apologize for your audio inconvenience, RB.
Travelers head back to the airports today and for the weekend. For those certainly domestically,
the collar on his neck is too tight.
Airplanes, masks in particular.
It is too tight.
No, they're not.
What do you call it when your neck has like a roll that comes out over your shirt collar?
The administration, quickly agreed not to enforce it. Now there is a court battle that's still looming. That ultimately the Court of Appeals will have a hearing on this issue, but the administration did not seek any emergency.
He's actually got a voice that sounds like this. But when they tighten him up, it drops it down to where he talks like this.
Is for foreign non-U.S. citizens.
I shouldn't be mocking the dude for shit he can't help.
Still have to.
Not everybody can have a silky smooth voice like myself.
A lot of countries, have done away with that requirement, but that's really the main requirement that
I shouldn't be prejudiced against other people's voices.
By and large, the last restrictions have gone away.
It is a bad everything, RB. We're gonna give this dude the benefit of a doubt. It's a bad angle on his webcam. It's bad lighting in his office.
Subways and trains.
It's an ugly ass tie. Don't ever wear that tie again, dude.
There are really no restrictions.
I'm going to assume this is a single man because no wife would let him wear that tie on TV.
Any sort of mode as a result of COVID.
The Thanksgiving holiday may not be the best example or the time for this, but
now the host, that's a man whose wife
where are
picked out a tie for him.
Going to find cheaper seats in the midst of the highest ticket prices, airline ticket prices in recent years.
I can rock a suit, but I got those baby smooth hands.
There are certain routes where you do see discounts. There have been a couple startups. A company called Breeze.
Ain't nothing wrong with this haircut now.
Smaller airports, sort of a point-to-point service where traditionally the large airlines focus on the hubs, right? So they're providing service to those small airports.
Has he said anything we should have been listening to?
And so there is some effort to try to have some lower cost.
I hate that on our test run of this stream, we picked like the most boring topic ever. They're talking transportation. It makes sense leading into Thanksgiving.
The number of flights, there are fewer flights per day, and the larger airlines offer more flights. So, I do think there are deals.
It's a good topic.
You have to hunt around, you have to
it's timely
on peak days. And I think that's one of the things we're seeing at Thanksgiving is that sort of the traditional Wednesday to Sunday, most of the traffic is on those 2 days has really been spread out.
I can't afford to fly anywhere, at least not right now.
Remotely. Maybe you left for Thanksgiving a few days early. You worked from the location, where you're going to
I don't know that I would feel safe flying somewhere either.
Holiday. And that's something that the airlines have seen a lot.
I may be becoming some sort of like
and personal
recluse
travel
germaphobe or something
than they used to. So that's one. One example is United Airlines. And others consider the Thanksgiving.
And then again, you take me out in public. I'm still the social butterfly I've always been.
It's a longer period, which takes some of the pressure off those really tough Wednesday and Sunday. And Sunday will still be the busiest day, but it won't.
I'm sorry, Parsons. We talked over you the entire time.
It might have in the past.
Your calls for David Shepardson at 2027.
Your tie looks like the carpet at a laser tag place.
It's 2027-488-8001. Let's go to Frank first up in Uxbridge, Massachusetts. Frank, good morning.
Good morning. The question I have is the concern for lower experience requirements for SICs. And we all are aware, at least in the industry, that the desire to get into a major is pretty high. And as the regionals have their personnel transfer to the majors, there's going to be a lower and lower experience desire for
mushrooms be decriminalized there. Hell yeah, Spider.
Cockpits of regionals, and
take a couple of caps for me.
They're a lot more than just simply backup. And you know, it's a team environment, and a lot of times the weak captain relies.
I'm going to have to scoot in a bit.
SIC.
So every time I go in there, like I'm talking with Curiouser, I didn't know if she was going to take a shower and then we were going to leave.
Position is the industry finding itself in regard to that?
And David Shepardson, could you explain what an SIC is?
Sure. I mean,
I was just planning to go 2 hours, but I'm having a lot of fun.
In the second seat, and
I like making fun of this dude.
A lot of concern about the experience level, the number of hours of training that second command had after.
I'm sorry. I'm sure he's a nice guy. He works for Reuters. He's a correspondent. I guess he covers the airline industry.
Back in February 2009, you know, with the exception of a single person who was killed in a.
We've had a lot of fun this morning. I made a lot. For those of you who didn't join us at 7 a.m. when we came on.
13 years, the United States. So that
I really made a lot of inappropriate comments about the things that I would do with Rishi Sunak.
U.S. jetliner.
He got invited to my munch.
Remarkable record, but there are a lot of issues here with pilots, and certainly because the large airlines are paying a lot of money, and they're right now.
He a sexy man.
You can.
Suella Braverman, like I'd invite her over too. I've heard she's a snake in the grass. I bet fucking Rishi Sunak is a snake in the grass too.
A lot of money to get the necessary training, so there is a push in Congress to reduce that.
Kern Stormer,
strongly opposed by
Keith Sterner. Keith Sterner
has not agreed to a waiver.
The labor leader. I wouldn't invite him. He's not my type.
Some airlines that have sought them. So, there is pressure. The regional airlines are struggling to find enough pilots and have been pushing to get those.
No, I'm into this. I'm into C-SPAN. That's why I'm doing this.
Congress is going to have the FAA reauthorization.
But I'm a weirdo.
Next September, and so I think you're going to see a lot of debate and about what should the policy.
That's what I may be having more fun doing this than I do doing the normal show.
To date, that's strongly opposed by the Colgan families and others who don't want to see any change, and they cite
Wednesdays may become my favorite days
as one reason not to do that.
On the passenger front, not only this holiday weekend, but certainly we'll see a fair share of cancellations and things like that for. A weekend like that, kind of like this, fairly typical. Over the summer, the administration penalized a number of airlines for cancellations over the summer. What was the reason for that? How much did they?
Because of the topic, we're not getting the awesome calls we normally. It was a
pretty rough summer. Everybody agrees, right? And I think number one, the airlines were not ready. The FAA didn't have as much staffing at some key places as they would like.
Residue.
It was pretty awful in the system.
Go ahead, light one up, tip one back. It's all right to have a little fun before you hit the sack.
Who's to blame? The airlines, were pretty strongly. We're pretty angry that, on what's so-called blue sky days, that FAA staffing issues, especially in New York and Florida.
That's the sign off for the Troll Patrol. I'm going to, for the
problem, the FAA says
we're on during the daytime. I'm going to have to use what I always use for my
staffing
stand-up.
Don't
do anything I wouldn't do. However, that doesn't limit your options very much at all.
And so, so what we just saw recently was that the Transportation Department fined, a number of foreign carriers for not, having, refunds, of not properly, giving people, refunds in a timely fashion over the last 2 years. A lot of those, due to, it's stemming from COVID cancellations. That these carriers were fined, about $7.5 million. I think of that money they paid, roughly $4 to $5 million. And returned about $600 million,
we're gonna have an issue here because, will I know anybody that's on to raid?
Administration, has been pushing.
When I came on, Kai was on.
Job of
totally raid Kai if he is.
They help customers. They push the airlines to change or tweak the wording of their commitments to customers in the event of a cancellation or a serious of a delay.
I don't know what kind of weird hours. Guys keeping over there.
But the airlines did not agree to offer compensation, strictly
Any of you
for
have
a delay.
suggestions of
You buy an
people I
airline
should
ticket,
be
you're buying,
following for
you know,
possible
the airline's
morning
going to
raids?
fly you from point A to point B. They don't have to fly you within a certain amount of time, or do they currently face, a cost? They do have to offer you your money back or a different flight if it's delayed by a certain amount. But currently, unlike Europe, for example, you don't get compensation, just because a flight has been delayed.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Transportation was a great topic for them to talk about the day before Thanksgiving.
If your flight is delayed.
I just picked a bad day to test this out.
You saw a lot of lawmakers. You saw more than.
But it's all good.
Generals say, hey, DOT, you're not doing a good enough job enforcing the existing.
David Shepardson isn't very fun. We'll go ahead. Okay, if you weren't here for I didn't have a animal video last night. We had animal pictures. So perhaps you didn't catch it. Perhaps you just want to see it again. Let's look at a baby otter. Look at that baby otter. This 10-week-old cub was taken to the Scottish SPCA's National Wildlife Rescue Centre in Fishcross, where it is getting fed milk and hand-fed a diet of fish. Hold on, what's his name? Buddy. Buddy the baby otter. Getting fed some milk. Check that otter out. You otter know. So, apparently someone found this otter, got separated from its mom. The Humane Society says they will stay with them for about a year until they are old enough to fend for themselves, and then they will integrate it back into the wild. But look how I didn't know otters were that goddamn cute. Fucking look at that thing. Water weasels be cute. Look at it eat there. Look at its tongue. Speaking of eating, I gotta feed some cats. They are, they kind of pissed over here. Like they are definitely letting me know that, hey, why are our bowls empty? We are upset with you right now. That's the otter we ended with last night. Look at that fucking face. We're going to raid in to Taylor X Live. And I've been in Taylor X Live's chat a few times. Super fucking cool. We'll smoke up with him when we drop in. So don't do anything I wouldn't do. However, that doesn't limit your options very much at all. I am Justin Freakin. We're going to be off the next few days. We're going to be back Sunday night with our normal Troll Patrol Live. We're going to find out what that news be doing. We'll catch up on all the shit that happened over the holiday. So I'll see you fuckers then.